Eliza, are you ready for us to start?
Yep.
What time is it? Yeah, it's 4.
4 o'clock.
Everybody ready? Okay, it is 4 o'clock, November 2nd, 2020, and I will call the meeting to order. Eliza, will you do the roll call, please?
Certainly. Katie Frisch,
Here.
Susan Marolt,
Here.
Jonathan Nickel,
Here.
Dwayne Romero. I see you, Dwayne. Okay, you're on mute. And Susie Zimmett.
Here.
Okay. You have quorum. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Eliza, were we going to move the AEA up to the beginning of reports and comments?
Yes, that's going to be moved at the beginning and right after public comment.
Okay, so with that small change, did we have a motion and a second?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, so
Motion.
I'll do
Eliza,
roll call.
yeah, please.
Katie Frisch,
Aye.
Susan Marolt,
Aye.
Jonathan Nickel,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero. I see you. And Susie Zimmett.
We can't hear you, Dwayne.
No, we can't hear you, Dwayne. Okay, so welcome everybody. I just wanted to acknowledge and highlight and express our gratitude and just pleasure in all the hours of planning and moving and putting in place and then moving things again, just to get our students back in the building. And so that's just really great. And we're thrilled about that. And we appreciate everybody being flexible as we just try to maneuver this into the best way possible. And just to, our students and families to thank you for being flexible as well. And for everyone continuing to observe the 5 commitments and just keep our community safe. So we appreciate everyone's team effort in that regard. With that, I think we will, let me find my place here. We'll go ahead and move to public comment. Do we have people? A couple people have signed up, it looks like. Tamara?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Thanks for giving me a few minutes today. I'm going to stick to 3 minutes.
Great.
Again, I said I was going to keep coming and keep giving updates on stats. 232,000 Americans have died from COVID, and I don't want that to ever leave our thoughts as we are moving and pushing towards reopening. I, like every teacher, I'm sure in this district, was excited to see students last week and this week. It's why we are teachers, is to spend time with students, and I loved every minute of it. However, I cannot stress enough that my love for being with my students does not outweigh my love for my own family and my own children and my own health. And that's what I'm taking at risk, to be with students in the building. So I want to always keep that also at the forefront of your mind. Despite the excitement that I have over the district finding a way to get teachers tested, I also want to remind you that every day I walk into this building, I walk past a warning that says COVID-19 is a very contagious disease that can cause severe illness and death. Older adults and people with underlying medical conditions are at higher risk. By entering this facility, you knowingly and voluntarily assume all risks related to exposure of COVID-19. I pass that every day, and that is not true. I do not voluntarily take those risks. Those are risks that I have to take as a result of needing a job and caring about my employment. So I think it's also important to recognize that we are not voluntarily taking those risks. We are taking those risks because the school board has asked us to be in the building. And I hope that the school board accepts the responsibility of those risks. If, heaven forbid, any one of us gets really sick or passes away as a result of this deadly pandemic that is going on. Finally, the last thing that I wanted to mention was the last school board meeting. I was upset, would be the kindest word I can think about, by some of the board members' comments about how we have an obligation to educate students, insinuating that what we've been doing for the past several months is not educating students. I take deep, deep offense to the idea that I haven't been doing my job and I haven't been educating students. I know that my children's teachers have definitely been educating my children. So I just felt that those comments were really offensive. Just because we're online does not mean that we are not doing our jobs and that we are not educating students. And with that being said, I would like to just respectfully throw it out there that the board consider doing hybrid meetings for the entire time that teachers are being asked to do concurrent learning. I think that it's important that the board lead by example and have meetings that are in person and also online, so that not only can you guys understand where teachers are coming from, but you're leading by example. And to not that I want to echo the board's, some board members' belief that we were not fulfilling our job while being online. I think it's a good way to demonstrate that you are fulfilling your job, just like the expectation you had for teachers that we had to be in person for us to be doing our job. I think that would be great for the board to also practice the same model for as long as we are being asked to practice the concurrent model. And that's all I had to say today. Thank you so much.
Here,
Thank you, Tamara.
here. Here, here. I'll be the first to sign up for that hybrid in-room model for sure. It's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I'm getting sick of Zoom meetings, actually.
I have no problem doing in person. We did that for a while until we were asked not to do that. So it wasn't our decision. We were asked not to do that. So happy to
Well,
do
and
it.
I think that came about so that everyone could see us and hear us better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think there's a nuance there. I think Tamara's suggestion of going to hybrid actually kills two birds with one stone. It helps the role model and shows some example and leadership, but it also continues to keep the platform open for, because obviously we get great participation and broader community awareness on these types of, call-in models. So I love the hybrid play that she's suggesting.
I think we'll need to hear from Chris Durham about how our tech upgrades are going at some point, or maybe the leadership knows how the tech upgrades are going for the room, so that we can do all
have
the
microphones and
Yeah.
whatnot. Yep.
exactly.
Yeah, that would be good. Okay, we'll move on to the next public comment, which is Adam Good. Are you around? Adam? I don't hear anything from Adam. Okay. We will now move to our AEA update.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. It was supposed to be Stephanie Nixon presenting tonight, and she is in the process of driving home. And so you get me again, for better or for worse. So thank you for the time tonight. I will be very brief, I hope. A few quick notes about AEA before we begin with the update. Just to remind everybody, because we feel like there's been some confusion. Aspen Education Association has been an integral part of the Aspen School District since 1960. We've been an association since 1960. We represent both the classified and certified educators of the district. The executive council and association building or department representatives are elected by members and are in unpaid positions. We represent 180 voices and are one of the largest unions within Colorado for the size of our school. Our parent organizations, CEA, the Colorado Education Association, and NEA, the National Education Association, are the largest unions in the state and in the country, respectively. So we wanted to give you a little bit of update on the work that AEA has been doing since the last board meeting. AEA has been working with district administration in response to the petition that we delivered at the last board meeting. We've met for over 10 hours since that meeting on top of our normal teaching schedules to try to work collaboratively on solving these member concerns. We started focusing on the metrics that we discussed in the petition. Admin, members of the board, AEA, and Pickens County Public Health have been working on those metrics to use as guidelines to transition from one instructional model to the next. We believe we have agreed on which metrics to use. The window of numbers for each metric continues to be developed with Pickens County Public Health support, and we will move closer to providing our community with expectations for transition of instruction. We hope to get more clarity on this week. The petition also called for clear cleaning protocols. This is still unclear, as specific hand washing and sanitizing protocol lack specifics. Faculty and staff are still unclear on frequency and expectations for students. And furthermore, teaching staff is still unclear about what it is their job to clean and what is the custodial staff's job to clean, and how frequently and at what time cleaning is happening. So we are still looking for that information, the specific cleaning schedule and exactly the protocols for what is being cleaned and when, and what is up to staff to clean, and what students can and should be cleaning. Social distancing was also the final main point of the petition. Dr. Baugh's letter of October 22nd said that students and staff would be able to maintain a range of 3 to 6 feet of social distancing. This is not occurring in many of our classrooms, on buses, or in other common spaces, and we look forward to hearing how administration is going to work on solving this major concern. Working conditions. We continue to be aware of working conditions in our buildings. The installation of the bipolar ionization systems had an effect on our aging HVAC systems. One of these, you solve one problem and another one pops up. And in combination with our recent weather has left some of our rooms out in the cold, literally 20-degree classrooms. We experienced some major extremes and continue to ask for safe and appropriate working conditions surrounding air quality and heating. Safety. So in addition to everything else we've been dealing with, as you guys are aware, we have had an unfortunate situation on campus 2 weekends ago. And so now, as we transition to full in-person learning at the elementary school, our focus has shifted to safety on campus. AEA has been questioning the status of the standard response protocol training for students and faculty and staff, and especially for substitutes. An assessment of our security measures is needed to ensure the safety of faculty and staff. Training and drills need to be implemented immediately. And the assault of an AEA member last weekend left many of our members scared and fearful for their safety. And for some, that may be the straw that breaks the camel's back. There is only so much mental toll we can all accept, and many staff members are nearing their breaking point. Substitutes, our favorite topic. Transitioning more faculty in and out of quarantine has had an extreme strain on the educational system, and the substitute shortage continues. Students are getting inconsistent instruction from a rotating cast, and this provides interruption for in-person instruction and does not give consistency, especially at the elementary level. Communication. AEA has implored district administration to consider a texting system instead of just email. Digital communication needs to be as personal as possible and needs to reach parents, faculty, and staff in a timely manner. Phone calls in lieu of email are also really important when the subject is quarantine or a potential illness. Receiving an email that your child will be without their teacher for a possible 2 weeks is just not enough. AEA is still working with district administration to implement more personalized, reliable means of communication for sensitive or immediate situations, as well as continuing to push the need for thoughtful translations for our Latinx populations. And finally, testing. AEA is incredibly grateful for the testing that will be soon available to the district. We have been asking for testing since July, and we are expecting that this layer of mitigation will add some stability for staff and families. Thank you so much to Barry Ramberg, RN, Dr. Jeannie Siebold, Dr. Krista Giesel, Katie Frisch, and Dr. Baugh for all of the work securing the testing procedures. We do want to make sure that people realize that testing, while critically important to stopping the spread of this virus, is not the end all be all, and that we must continue to follow the other layers of mitigation, including social distancing, mask wearing, hand washing, and staying home when sick, to ensure that our schools can continue to stay open in person and stay healthy and safe. We do not want testing to give people a false sense of security and for our other protocols to fall by the wayside. So that's what I have to say today. Is there any short questions I can answer? I know that we have an curriculum auditor waiting for us, so I don't want it to get into a lengthy conversation.
Doesn't sound like there's questions. Anybody? Okay, Marnie, thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, Dave, I think we will now move to your report.
Well, and I believe that we will start with Joellen Killian, who is the primary author of our recent audit for the pre-K through 12 math and language arts audit. And I have a couple other things to touch on after Joellen shares her insights into the Aspen School District and literacy and math curriculum. So Joellen, I see you're on the call. Are you ready to go?
I am. I'm ready to go. Thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity to share this work with you. I also intend to be as brief as possible and welcome your questions. So I wanted to begin with just a very quick overview of the purpose of the audit and the three primary questions we were seeking answers to. The purpose was to look at the clarity, consistency, and coherence of the ELA and math curriculum, beginning in pre-K and stretching all the way to 12th grade. We did seek to answer three fundamental questions in our work. One was the degree to which the curriculum was aligned with the Colorado academic standards and the Common Core standards, the degree to which the curriculum was clear and consistent, and whether or not it was aligned vertically and horizontally in order to support students' learning and teacher success. And our very quick response to the three questions was that one, math is far more closely aligned with the Colorado academic standards. Each of the math units, beginning in kindergarten and stretching through 12th grade, do demonstrate alignment with the Colorado academic standards and also with the Common Core standards. The ELA curriculum is less aligned. There are gaps in the ELA curriculum. There are more gaps evident at the elementary school than there are at middle and high school, but there are gaps that exist all the way through the curriculum. We did find that the extensive work that has been happening in curriculum in both ELA and math is a wonderful start. It's very evident teachers have invested a tremendous amount of effort and work in designing the curriculum that exists at this point, yet the curriculum is insufficient in its detail to provide guidance for teachers that will mitigate and alleviate gaps in student learning. So there is a good start, there is a good framework, yet the gaps in specificity, particularly in areas of a specified learning plan and in assessment, leave a great deal of potential for variation in student learning. Our recommendations included supporting the elementary curriculum in ELA by seriously considering purchasing a comprehensive ELA curriculum, one that addresses all aspects of the ELA curriculum and the standards. Right now at elementary, teachers are using such a breadth and variety of resources to accomplish instruction that there are way too many gaps for student learning that are possible. We identified close to 40 different resources that elementary teachers are integrating into their instruction, and that variety leaves too many opportunities for holes in student learning, and really, quite frankly, require teachers to do way too much work to bring some consistency and clarity to their instruction. At middle grades and high school in ELA, we again also found some gaps in the instructional areas, gaps in writing in particular in middle grades, and inconsistency in the instructional resources that are being used in middle grades, and also teachers being required to do a great deal of work to try to fill those gaps by pooling and pulling resources from a number of spaces. Overall, in ELA, we recommend developing a comprehensive and coherent philosophy of ELA instruction, similar to the one that has been designed for mathematics, that unifies instruction in the 4 core domains of reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and then also applying disciplinary literacy so that teachers have a coherent approach to instruction, and there can be a scaffolding of student learning beginning in pre-K and all the way through 12th grade. We'd like to see a consistent set of instructional resources used, particularly at the elementary level, to minimize the variance and the quality of opportunities for students to learn, and frankly, to make teachers' responsibility for finding highly rated resources easier by putting those resources in their hands. Middle and high school teachers can use more trade resources and have opportunities to be able to pull in literature for most of the standards and disciplinary based reading for standards, and they are less in need of a common set of instructional resources, although having those ELA resources extend at least as far as grade 6 could bring some greater coherence and vertical alignment for student learning. High school teachers and middle school teachers are doing some great work in putting together units, and again, more clarity, much more guidance, much more specificity is needed. As I move into mathematics, again, mathematics is meeting standards far more, it's far more aligned than ELA. There's a common philosophy in the vision and mission and beliefs of mathematics instruction that provides some unifying framework for the math curriculum. The math units of study that have been developed from K through 8 are very well done. The structure of those units is incredibly thoughtful. Teachers' effort in putting those together is evident, and those units still have work to do. It's sort of the second tier of development to those units, providing specificity, greater clarity in the learning plan, in other words, how those units are taught, and bringing greater consistency to the assessments that are integrated into the units. I believe the addition of the new 5th and 6th grade curricular resources will help streamline some of that work for teachers and allow teachers to take the units of study that have been developed and weave them together so there is greater detail and specificity. High school units need greater clarity as well. They some of the units are extraordinarily long for a unit of study. For example, there are several units starting with pre-algebra all the way through geometry that are sometimes 8, sometimes a whole semester long, and they could benefit from some greater specificity, some brevity to those units so that there can be indeed more clarity for teachers as they pick up those units and use them to guide instructional decisions and to focus instruction for students. Overall, mathematics, I think, is in much better shape. There is greater clarity at the elementary in the instructional resources that are being used. The addition of the new 5th and 6th grade curriculum is certainly adding some strength to the middle school, and there is still some work in terms of clarifying which instructional resources will support the curriculum that teachers have designed beginning in grade 7 and stretching through high school. We had a couple of overarching recommendations for the curriculum in general in the school district. One is we'd love to recommend a revision of the curriculum development policy to include in it a requirement for a curriculum management plan, meaning that the district would establish a plan of action to address curriculum issues over a period of time, whether it's a one-year plan or multi-year plan. I think the policy could be strengthened by requiring the school district to set out its particular focus for curriculum development review, ongoing analysis, and revision. We also think it would be wonderful in that curriculum management plan to spell out whose role the curriculum work falls under and the responsibility of teachers and principals in regard to curriculum development. We think a curriculum management plan like that will help the board with budgetary decisions. It will help guide decisions regarding work of central office staff and can, I think, provide attention to curriculum across a period of time. Those are the major high-level areas of recommendation. There are a few other recommendations that are very specific to the various grade levels, to about the resources that are being used, but I am going to stop at this point so that I can entertain any questions you might have that are specific to the report or about anything I've said at this point.
Okay,
Thank
yeah, I
you.
had a question. Thank you very much for the report and the recommendations. I wanted to know, so we assessed the curriculum that has been developed, and there has been said there's been a lot of work done on the especially middle grade or middle school math, and then also K through 4 more, but that was kind of the focus of the last couple of years. But did we measure how well we're implementing it, or we just looked at, here's the book, here's what we should be teaching supposedly, and then as far as implementation of that curriculum?
We did not measure implementation, and that was the desire and intent from the beginning. However, given the remote environment and the changes that are occurring, it was difficult to really conduct a high quality analysis of implementation. And I'm actually quite glad we didn't do that, knowing that teachers are implementing a new curriculum, particularly at 5th and 6th grade with illustrative math, because I think it would have been unfair to them to do it so quickly. The units of study have been evolving, and I think as some further revisions of those units of study are made, in mathematics particularly, then it would be appropriate to look at an implementation analysis to determine the degree to which the curriculum as written is being implemented in classrooms.
Okay, so is it fair to say that, when I'm just trying to put all of the different points into simpler words, that we got a pretty good start with the work that's been done over the last 2 years on the math curriculum in the K through 8 categories? We need to finish doing that K through 12, and then we need to assure that it's implemented properly, would be like
That's
the next
correct.
steps. Okay,
Yes, that's correct.
all right.
Can
And
I-
then on the,
Go ahead.
yeah, and then I just, the same thing on the language side, that work has not started yet. And we've identified here several things that need to be worked on. And we have to get going on the work, on doing that work around alignment, picking the right curriculums, etc.
Yes.
Just like the initial work in math. Okay, thank you.
Yes, there is some start in ELA. I don't want to pretend that nothing has begun. It is really emerging. So the teachers are beginning to identify what their key topics and themes are. They've created some year-long pacing guides that are fairly broad at this point. There are units of study emerging at the high school level in ELA. So it's at a much more emergent stage than mathematics is.
Okay, thank you.
And this, my question is kind of along the same lines as Jonathan's, who you just answered his. Under the K-8 math, it says that grade 8 does not use a core curriculum resource, but rather lists ideas in the learning plan section. So I'm a little confused when you just explained at Jonathan's question that we didn't really look at implementation of the math program, but because we had adopted the core, that you gave it sort of a better grade than the ELA.
So there are core instructional resources, for example, at elementary, kindergarten through 4th grade, the units of study specify Eureka Math as the primary instructional resource for teachers to use that align with the units of study that teachers have written. Grades, middle school uses and references 2 core instructional resources, Go Math and Eureka. And while there's a good deal of parallel, they are not the same. And if teachers are pulling from different resources without guidance and direction, the opportunity for things to fall through the cracks exist. And so that's where the specificity is needed to be clear about what the learning plan is for any core mathematics concept. And rather than identifying 7 or 8 possible assessments for teachers to use, to identify priority assessments that will measure student success related to the content of those units. And then at starting in grade 7 and stretching through high school, There are some resources referenced, but again, multiple resources referenced. And it isn't clear in the written curriculum what is the core and how much teachers are depending on one set of resources versus another set of resources. Again, leaving lots of opportunity for things to fall through the cracks.
I see. So without giving a grade to how we're doing or anything, even though our math is doing better overall than our ELA, it still has a lot of room for improvement. Is that fair to say?
The primary area for improvement in mathematics is specificity.
Thank you.
And yes, math is in better shape than ELA.
Thank you, Joelle. Oh, are you done, Susie?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Joellen. This is a very interesting read, to say the least. So thank you.
Well, if you need to go to sleep, it probably will.
Okay, maybe once, just once I fell asleep. So just to be clear, because this is, the first time I've seen a curriculum audit, so I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what I'm understanding. What this does is lay out what we need from K through 12 and then at each grade level for both English language arts and math. And it doesn't speak to different needs of different levels of students with regards to that curriculum. Is that correct? Like, for example, this doesn't deal with how we might handle an advanced math curriculum and how that might be divided up. It just gives you every box you need to check to get the correct curriculum for each grade level. Is that a good way of thinking about it?
It is definitely one way to think about it. One of the gaps, lack of specificity, an area that we found consistently through all of the curricula was guidance for teachers in terms of how to support students who are at different levels of learning. So that degree of differentiation, the way to address student misconceptions, for example, in mathematics, places to deal with students with different learning needs, those were not at all included in the curriculum and are typically included in a solid curricula. So that's an area that you've just identified, which is one of those areas of specificity we would love to see added to the existing curricula.
Okay, so this is setting up against the base Colorado and Common Core standards and doesn't speak to a student who might not be able to handle all that in one particular year and how you adjust and vice versa on the other side of the coin if someone's going through it more quickly and how that classroom. So typically you would see that addressed within a curriculum guideline.
Within a unit of study, particularly, you would have recommendations for acceleration for students who had already mastered the content. And you would also see recommendations for addressing students who were not yet ready for the unit's content, or how to adjust the content for students who might be missing some beginning steps.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah, Katie, I see on that she mentions, for example, on page 10, that suggestion that we need, she has suggestions for us for differentiation, specific suggestions for responding to learners' differences in readiness, interests, and learning profiles. And she mentions that a few times, that we should differentiate better, that we have some gaps in differentiation.
Oh, sorry.
And that's a challenge. It's a challenge for teachers, and the more guidance that can be provided for them, the more successful students are likely to be.
Well, I'm also curious. I was thinking also about our interesting times that we're going through, and perhaps, whether we've been able to get through, the curriculum as prescribed and how there might be differences in what was addressed over the spring and in this fall due to COVID. And then, how do you see where the gaps are and fill them in as you're going forward? And I don't know if a stronger, more robust curriculum with that specificity might have helped us identify areas that perhaps we weren't able to cover due to our circumstances, and perhaps might help us address those going forward.
It would indeed, because having it written would then give teachers the opportunity to sit with that curricula and make those critical professional judgments they're required to make about where the priorities are, so that there are no massive gaps that are going to lead to problems in later years. And that's a really difficult decision for teachers to make. And when the curricula are well written, then it's much easier for teachers to make those decisions.
Other questions from board members?
Yeah, I
have
had.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go, Susan. You haven't
Well,
had
I
a
just
chance to ask.
wondered if you could elaborate just a bit more on what a curriculum management plan would do and what that is, I guess, because I think because we don't have one, we don't really know.
So I did include in the report links to two samples of curriculum management plans. And basically a curriculum management plan lays out over a period of time the how curricula are reviewed, revised, developed, assessed, validated, approved, the entire process. What's the process you will use? Who will be involved? What the timeline is. So for example, are you wanting every 5 years to review the curricula in each discipline? So now that we've done math and ELA, obviously then mapping out the work that needs to happen over the next few years. And then when does the review and the analysis of the science, social studies, physical education, world languages, other discipline, when does that occur? And that's what a curriculum management plan does, sort of from a broad level. Here's our process, and then specifically each year, what will happen. So the executive director, the executive director's work plan from last year was a skeleton of a plan. It sort of laid out what the primary work responsibilities were and some timeline. But I think if you take a closer look at the samples, you'll see them some more specificity that will help. The work in curriculum is one of those constant, ongoing efforts that occurs in a school district, and it takes time and effort and resources, and being able to plan for it, to budget for it, to create the teams, the work teams on an ongoing basis so that people are engaged and have an opportunity for input and to share their thinking. And that just takes some planning, some overarching planning to attend to all those details.
Great, thank you.
One follow-up question on that. For a district our size, at what level would you typically see this management plan being executed, and how many people? Like how much staff time is typically for this kind of a district in our state would be necessary to allocate to that?
I think someone whose primary responsibility at the district office is curriculum, or at least for about half time in a district your size, particularly when you think of the breadth of disciplines that are being taught in a school. In a district your size, it takes at least that kind of a level of investment to oversee and manage and work with teacher teams and to coordinate that effort. That, of course, is something, because I'm not as familiar with how curriculum is currently being written other than by teams of teachers coming together. I think that's an area of focus that will require some study. Along with curriculum, though, there's the assessment piece of curriculum, which is another major area of focus that pairs well with curriculum. And then the third component is the professional learning component, how teachers are being involved in learning and studying and constantly upgrading their practice. And those are the three prongs that fall nicely together to make sure that not only do you have a well-written curriculum, you have one that is assessed appropriately and one that is supported with sufficient professional learning for teachers.
And do you feel that this audit addresses all three adequately for us to move forward?
We did not look at professional learning specifically. We did have input from teachers about their professional learning. We were able to look at some of the professional learning teachers have had in math and ELA over the last few years. What we think, basically, teachers are having access to lots of opportunity. What isn't as clear to us is the alignment of the professional learning with the curriculum that is being implemented. And so because the curriculum is still not tight, I don't think I would be able to say in great confidence that there is tight cohesion between professional learning and the curriculum. So that's something, as curricula are continually being revised, refined, that we can begin to think about, or the district can begin to think about where the gaps are in both teacher knowledge and skill, as well as in student knowledge and skill, because the professional learning then will address both of those.
And there was no looking at any kind of assessments, though, that we currently use, is that correct?
We looked high level at the state assessment data. We also looked at the assessments that were specified in the units of study, and that's where we found multiple assessments listed as, here are some recommended, particularly in mathematics, they were recommended, but occasionally in those units, there were so many listed, it was, there was no guidance in terms of which were the high priority assessments to use. And in ELA, there's a lot of reading assessment being done at the elementary level, but not much clarity about how ELA is being assessed at the middle grades and high school. This did bring us to wonder, and as I've talked both with principals and with Dave and Theron, whether or not as a district, the district wanted to become and identify itself as an IB district, meaning that because you have an IB high school program, one thought is to plan the curriculum beginning in pre-K to move students to readiness for and success in IB. That's kind of a backwards way to plan the curriculum, and a consideration that I believe is worth discussion before too much work goes forward on finer grain revisions in the curriculum. If the district is guiding all students toward IB at high school, and holds that as an expectation, that then will change what the curricula looks like for pre-IB middle school and early years curriculum, with the thought that you'll be on a learning trajectory right into IB preparation.
Okay. I have a couple questions. One would be on, I'm looking at the report and you talk about the 10 elements of a high quality curriculum. Did we go through and try and assess on those 10 elements how good we were, like on a scale of 1 to 10 or something like that?
I would say on those 10 elements, particularly in mathematics, we didn't do them by item by item. What we did find in the design of the units of study, both in ELA and mathematics, where they are done, the district used the understanding by design framework for the design of those units, and for the most part was able to meet the first half of those elements in each of those units of study. What was missing were those items that fall near the bottom of that list. They were referenced, but are not at all specific. So for example, there are no anchor papers in any of the units. The rubrics are not linked to the units. The learning activities, while referenced, were not sufficiently identified. There was a reference, for example, in mathematics at the elementary to refer to a unit in Eureka Math. But in middle school mathematics and high school mathematics, there was reference to multiple sources for that sequence of learning activities. There was virtually no suggestions for differentiation in those units, no troubleshooting guides, for example. So we did use those, but we didn't rate each of the units of study by those 10 elements because we saw patterns occurring across all of them.
But is that something we could potentially get as, as something to help us as a work plan going forward?
Absolutely.
Where you kind of say, just like, okay, in the mission related accomplishments in curricular philosophy, 8 out of 10, here's a couple finer points you need to work on for this particular grade level or set, but fine. But then, like you say, troubleshooting guide, 2, we don't have them. So we got to get them in place. And then I don't know also if then in terms of what's most important, I mean, here there's 10, and I'm assuming that, not all are weighted equally. I don't know if the, troubleshooting guide is kind of the icing on the cake, or if it's really like the flower. So I don't know if there's some way you could help us also then understand, like, these are the highest priority items on this list, so that we
Yes.
can really work closely with the administration to get a concrete plan and, basically kind of like, here's the to-do list.
Yes,
Okay.
I think that's
I
the
think that would be really
next.
helpful as a
Yes.
board member to be able to have the tool like that.
Yeah, I think that's the next step, to take all of the recommendations, and I have offered to Dave and Theron to sit with them and whomever they wish to have involved in that conversation to help you do that prioritization in both ELA and math and those overarching areas. We've given you a great number of recommendations, and sorting through them and figuring out where to begin is always a bit of a challenge. And that's something I'm more than happy to support you in doing. I look forward to doing that, actually, because I think it will make the report more useful.
Okay. And then just another question is, like, if you had to give us a, based on all the different curriculums you've seen around and how well people are managing this. You know, are we above average? Are we below average? I mean, where do you feel? You got to give us a letter grade.
I have to give you a letter grade. That would be really difficult for me
No,
to do. I'm
in all
going to say you've
seriousness.
done great work so far and you're not finished.
Okay, so that was
Okay.
a partial answer. So,
I know.
but since one thing that, you know, I mean, I think at least my feeling is I would love for us to be able to say we have a world-class curriculum, um, and not just the Colorado standards. So how do we, you know, this report measured against the Colorado standards, then how do we move forward to be able to understand that? Is it just become then, if I have all these 10 steps in place, then it becomes more about the selection of choice of high quality curriculums and to make sure we have, you know, just high quality educational materials? Is that what becomes kind of the final step, or is it more about making the systems more important than the materials?
The materials are very important, and choosing a high quality, highly rated curriculum, curricular resources, for example, such as illustrative math, which I think, Theron, you said is 5th and 6th grade. Is that right? So that is a highly rated curriculum. It meets the Common Core standards. It is complete, it's thorough, it provides guidance, it leaves little room for gaps. And having those resources available for teachers to use can in fact substitute for having a curriculum. What becomes problematic when the materials become your curriculum is when those materials are no longer being used and there's no curriculum behind it, then where are teachers? So I like to think about districts that have world-class curriculum as having both a written curriculum and highly rated instructional resources to support the implementation of that curriculum.
Okay, so we should then, you talked about illustrative math, and we also use, and I don't know if we still are in all the grade levels, Eureka Math was another curriculum that we had. So as a board, we should seek to understand what those programs are, make sure that we are somewhere we have an understanding of what the different curriculums are, and then how they're rated just on an overall standard, and make sure that the administration is having high quality, highly rated instructional materials being used in the schools.
Right, and we did provide you guidance on the rating of the math resources and the ELA resources. One of the ELA resources that is widely used, 2 of them, and they seem to be a kind of the core of the ELA curriculum, are only partially aligned with and partially they're pulled out. Let me say it in a different way. They're pulled out of a holistic curriculum. So Words Their Way and what is the other one? I'm losing. Words Their Way and Making Meaning were the 2 primary ELA resources that are being used. They are not a comprehensive curriculum in ELA. And what's being left out is the writing, informational and persuasive writing, any attention to speaking and listening, and an extraordinary emphasis on word study. And I think there's a dramatic imbalance in the ELA curriculum. There's little attention to how writing is being taught right now. in the ELA curriculum, and even less attention to how it's being scored, how it's being rated, how it's being assessed.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your
Mhm.
A question I've wondered for a couple years. So the core goes through Algebra 2. And if we map backwards from Algebra 2, so many of our students go beyond Algebra 2 that what happens to their mapping backwards? If they go on to, say, pre-calculus or calculus, should they be at a different rate back in middle school compared to
Yeah,
the Common Core?
I think every 8th grader should be in algebra. That's kind of the national standard right now. It's the world standard that every 8th grader is in algebra. You're not there yet. I think that's an area of focus. Mathematics in the higher levels with pre-calc and calc is always an area of consideration. The degree to which students are expected to move to pre-calc and calc. Certainly that has been part of the math wars for decades. I would love for you to back map starting at pre-calc and work down. Again, that's not a universal recommendation from the team, nor is it universal across the nation at this point. But making sure every 8th grader is experiencing algebra is the pathway to students having more access to those higher level math classes, and an area I think that you could benefit from addressing, whether or not it is a separate algebra class or it is an integrated mathematics approach to all of the mathematics being woven together in a curricula such as integrated math.
Thank you.
That was a both and answer in case you want to know, but at some point you've got to make a decision. Where's that point that you're going to start from? And I would like you not to start too low. I go for where you want to go.
What's the highest starting point that you've seen? Is it
In an IB school with IB level mathematics, that's kind of a starting point. Yeah.
okay? Thank you.
So, just to be clear on this, we talk about the mapping out the curriculum, but the curriculum that we looked at doesn't have, that we're doing now does not have every student in algebra in 8th grade. So is that not a different mapping beyond differentiation in order to map it out to get kids to algebra in 8th grade? Is that something that you're assessed or not really?
It requires pushing the curriculum down a little further so that students are prepared for that 8th grade algebra. With illustrative math, it's very possible that as you begin to use that with more students and fill some of those early gaps, you'll see more students being ready for algebra. That's the design of illustrative math, but that needs to continue into 7th grade. It can't stop at 6th grade and then expect to jump kids into algebra at 8th grade without continuing that consistency right through 7th grade.
When does it start?
It starts, the first algebra curriculum, first algebra reference in the standards is in kindergarten.
So it's literally backward mapping it all the way.
Yeah, algebraic thinking begins in kindergarten,
Okay.
looking at sets.
So my next question is related to assessments. When I asked earlier, I think I was misunderstanding. So there's two different kinds of assessments we can talk about. One is the assessment within the curriculum and how those are formulated. Then I think from a board perspective, I'm less interested in knowing the results of those and more interested in the higher level, how we doing assessment, right? Which is to say, at what point in this process do we talk about, okay, so we have a curriculum, how do we know if we're doing it right? Like there's one thing having the right curriculum and there's another thing implementing the right curriculum that touches all the points that you mentioned. Is there that you did not look at, is that correct? The assessments at that level?
We did not look at assessments at that level. So one of the ways you know whether or not the curriculum is being implemented appropriately is to obviously look at the end of unit assessments to see the degree to which students are successful. However, as you said, that's really not what you are interested in as a board member. What you're more interested in is the next level up. And that next level up assessment is a focus on determining whether or not students are progressing as they should be progressing through their school years. Are they making appropriate levels of growth for the amount of time they are involved in education? There are a number of assessments that do that work. Currently, I know that you've got some assessments in early literacy that are helping you with that. But for example, the Northwest Education Association has an assessment called MAP. It's used around the globe. It measures where kids start and it determines where they're expected to go based on where they're starting. And it measures the degree to which kids are making that progress. That kind of an assessment, and that's not the only one, it just happens to be the one I know best and I know is being used fairly widely. That kind of assessment will help you and teachers know whether or not students are progressing at the rate they are expected to be progressing. And so that again might be something that you're considering as you look at this broad scale continued upgrading of the curriculum to give you data in regard to that growth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that sounds interesting. I mean, we have a number of metrics that we use in our board evaluation docs, and continually ask, are these the right ones? Is this what we should be looking at? And that's definitely on the list of things to consider in my mind, because I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I think it's a worthy question to consider.
We've had some controversies about whether flexible ability groupings within classrooms are going to be able to meet the needs of all of our kids, or whether if there are 20 kids who are at one level, they might move better, faster at their pace if they're in a classroom by themselves, those 20. Do you have an opinion, or is that unrelated to this audit, whether all this learning that we're going to aspire to can happen within flexible ability groupings, or whether a combination in regular classrooms, or whether it's a combination of upper level as needed, whole classrooms, and flexible ability grouping? It seems like it would be a lot for a teacher to differentiate from, the whole spectrum of abilities within one classroom. But is that what is supposed to happen?
So completely outside the audit, So I'm happy to address your question. And I want you to hear me say that this was not a part of the audit in any way, shape, or form. The research on homogeneous grouping of students is pretty clear. It is ineffective in meeting the needs of all students. There are equity issues. There are opportunities for students that are lost to accelerate their learning when they are in heterogeneous groups that allow them to see modeling of their peers and to learn from students. Differentiation is one of the most complex tasks teachers face, and it's one of the reasons why a very well-designed and developed curriculum can help them with some of the challenges of differentiation. This area of research has been going on for a long time. And so I encourage you to look at some of those syntheses of research.
Don't be afraid, get out there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Eliza, can you mute that microphone that's open?
Hey, Joe Ellen, I got a quick question.
Yes.
And I definitely appreciate the work that you and your team have conducted to help further our understanding and obviously, prepare us more for better decisions going forward. Super work. I got a quick question for Dave. Dave, earlier on, Joe Ellen mentioned the notion of and it was kind of an interesting and I think intriguing that, IB as a district, we have it at the high school, we dedicated it as a platform. I know that there are a lot of folks probably watching right now who are equally intrigued with that comment. What do you think? Did she discuss that with you? IB for all has been a kind of a rallying cry, but if we were to take it on as a district initiative, K through 12, what does that look like? And I mean, what say you?
Well, Dwayne, it's a great question. It's a multi-year project and it's incredibly robust. It has intense teacher professional development in alignment with the curriculum, which is, it's not a canned curriculum per se, but it's structured and there's expectations, and you benefit from having the IB organization provide a lot of support, a lot of guidance, and it actually gives sort of the letter grades kind of that Susie and Jonathan are asking for around how we're doing and how we're implementing. It's an exciting project. I think it prepares, IB it's probably 40 or 50 years old anyway, right, Joellen? And
Yes.
it's been incredibly successful when it's been implemented. It addresses equity issues. They've done them in IB schools in North Philadelphia. They've done them in, some of the poorest districts in the country, as well as, some of the more affluent ones. But what it does create is, this notion of a standard, and the IB for all is a really exciting thought. So it's really kind of a roadmap to excellence for most school districts when they embrace it and when they lean into it, right? But there's a process, and we have to go through the process. We have to work with IB. I've looked at it for another district, and we really, looked at the structure, and we looked at walking it back out of the high school into the middle years program, and then down into the elementary schools and building it that way. And that's pretty exciting work. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's among some of the best work you can do from a strictly objective perspective. And and I like it a lot. I think if I were a parent or a grandparent, I'd love for my kid to go through an IB district, because at the end of the day, when that youngster graduates, they're well prepared academically, right? And it's a robust program. There's no doubt about it. Did that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, I would simply add, and yes, I'd appreciate that feedback. And I think a lot of folks would resonate with what you just described. I also think that it may help us, as Joellen was describing, it may help us to further, and I know you're saying this, but I'm just going to articulate my view, just for alignment in that vertical cohesion and structure and the scaffolding that it can lend itself to. But probably more importantly, from my view, is that there's a cultural kind of excellence commitment, and it's but it has to be tied back to the message that I think someone's adopted, and I appreciate the message and I subscribe to it. Kind of the IB for all. It's not about, in my view, that's not about getting some sort of certificate or some sort of piece of paper. It's more about just an attitude of this passion and this constant drive for improvement, and having some level of additional thought and critical reasoning just to prepare our kids, for being great citizens. It just seems like it's a great cultural, philosophical space to continue to go towards, right?
Yeah.
And we did actually begin some conversations last year about a middle years program. And so we've started a little bit of the process, I would say, just to investigate.
Yeah.
Right, Eileen?
I see Eileen. Yeah. Get it.
I think that's a really interesting comment that was brought up, that we have started some of this, but then the question becomes, we have this great report with all these issues that we have to address. If we were to consider doing this idea of doing an IB curriculum K through 12 instead of going through all of the things that we need to do, how does that work? Like, Dave, how would one go about making that evaluation of, do we start checking off the line items here, or do we start with an evaluation of perhaps outsourcing the entire thing to IB and going about it that way?
Well, I actually didn't expect this question tonight, so I don't have the fullest answer. When I think back to looking into this 4 or 5 years ago, what happens, and Joellen, please, jump in and correct me if I go too far off course. We reach out to IB, they come in and they do an evaluation on where we are, and then they start providing us with some guidance. We set up some IB training over the summer for staff, and it's a process. It's a multi-year process. You apply to be an IB school, like an IB middle year school, so there's an application to it. You apply, and then they tell you what you have to do to hit certain standards. So if I memory serves, that's how that works. It kind of end games, really, if you will, in some respects, the audit. But like the 10 pieces on page 2 that we were talking about earlier, the 10 things out of Wiggins and Mackay, that's a way for us to also progress monitor how well we're implementing the IB curriculum, right? So, the audit is incredibly useful as a starting point and a roadmap forward. Curriculum from IB is structured and it's organized and it's tiered and it's scaffolded. But how well we implement it, that becomes our challenge, right? And so I know, like, IB has pulled, the certificate or the designation from school districts that haven't implemented fully and they haven't executed well. So, or, they, whatever, they're not doing it the IB way. So then they lose the IB, blessing, if you will. So, and you have to stay up on it. It's a constant refresh that Joellen was talking about, which is an integral part of whether we were to go IB or to, blaze our own trail. That refresh, that recycle, that management system is huge. IB provides sort of the management system as a way to think about this, right? It's the structure. It's at this point in time, you need to hit these benchmarks. So there's that external third party independent accountability that is really helpful sometimes.
And
Yeah.
it compares you to schools around the world.
And some of the best schools around the world.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I know this conversation has happened before in past years, not just last year, but a few years ago, I think there was a middle years conversation. Clearly my view is from what we've heard so far from Joellen is, we've done a lot of work, but we still have a long way to go. So then the question becomes, you don't want to waste time by fixing things and then changing back to a whole nother way of doing things. So, if it sounds like, Joellen, it's something you think we should possibly consider if we wanted to go that way. Is that accurate? Or, I have no concept of what kind of resource allocation we're talking about either when we're talking about this, whether, fixing these 10 things, which have multiple variables based on whether we're talking math or English language arts. And those are only 2 topics, right? We still have to do science and social studies and foreign language and all that stuff. So I'm asking out of ignorance more than anything here, understand it's a multi-year process, but this is probably a multi-year process too, as we're going to go through and do additional subject matter every year, I would assume. Dave, also looking up, for what you think, and we obviously would be a huge decision, but I think it's worth a discussion about.
So Dave, if you could wave a magic wand and have every kid in our district grow more or less a year at their ability every year, a year's growth, how would you be able to do that faster with IB or with all the changes that Joellen has pointed to?
I suspect we could get to a more robust platform faster with IB. I'm more familiar with Joellen's platform. IB is resource allocation intensive. I want to be very, very clear that, if we ask IB to the prom, we're saying no to other things, right? And the other thing is, like, it's hard to say, Dave, when there's all kinds of professionals that have to be a part of the conversation as well. And I think that's really important. But if our commitment is to accelerating the rate which we're delivering excellence in education for each and every kid, the most turnkey option with that magic wand you're describing, Susie, would probably be IB for all, right? It addresses equity, it addresses excellence, it addresses professional development for staff, it addresses, the tiers at each level, as well as a well-researched base for this is what we need to do, right? So that from if I were to start a school district from scratch, I would start an IB school district from scratch. And but again, that's the magic wand thing. So we have a good district. There's a lot of the strengths are in place. It's piecemeal, and figuring out exactly that piece is part of the challenge. And I think, like, Joellen has given us a phenomenal mirror in which to look and go, okay, how knowing this, what do I need to do? So I think IB is an incredibly intriguing proposition. And, I know they're doing a lot of their online training online now. Everybody is. So you don't have to travel too far to get the professional development. But again, it would be a multi-year endeavor with clear benchmarks along the way, and a clear commitment that would involve, fiscal and professional commitment. Joellen, do you have any other thoughts around the IB conversation?
Well, I just don't want you to do double work. I see a lot of work going on. There is such incredible evidence of work occurring in curriculum in the district, and it needs to be tighter. It needs to be more clearly focused and more specific. And if there's any thought that you're going to shift to an all IB, then please don't start this work and invest time and effort and energy into doing that until you take time to consider this question. I think because so much has been done already, that it would just not benefit anyone to continue on with where you are and then next year decide you're going to shift everything to all IB. I would say take the time, do your investigation, take a window of time, figure out what questions, who needs to be involved, hear parent voices, teacher voices, student voices, bring them to the table to do the exploration, as you are also beginning to think about how you're going to map out the work, whether it's IB work that's going to be mapped out or continuing the curriculum. So I am not a fan of people doing double duty when you don't need to. I'd like you to be streamlined and focused and take some time to make this decision if it is a decision you want to make. And if you decide it's not, then the next steps with the recommendations about the refinements that need to happen in ELA and math, they're not going to go away.
Thank you. I think that's.
But Dave, you don't have much to do, right?
It's easy for me to say that's your decision, friends. It's a big decision. There's no doubt about it. It is a big decision.
And either way, to be very, very clear, there's a lot of work to be done, and there's resources to muster, and there's steps to map out. Either way, there are steps to be mapped out and resources to be found and planning to be done.
Indeed.
So, yeah.
Indeed.
But is it fair to say that it's a decision or a definition that has been put off for a long time? So we should maybe just make it one way or the other, but quit having it out there kind of as like a haunting menace. Because it sounds like, it would be a bad thing to like go down one path and then 2 years later all to come around and say, oh, well, that was a good idea.
To put this in, I think this is about alignment with the strategic plan for the district, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
So this is the big question, which is, we're talking about Dave's goals later on, and we talk about vision and mission, and we have the draft strategic plan out there. It's a very, very big question, but I would, as one board member, support at least looking at it as an option. Whatever that means, to look at it as an option, to see to understand what it means in terms of resources and time and implementation and all the things that Joellen so eloquently outlined in a very scary way, actually, because it's a lot. But I, for one, would like to understand what it means and what it would mean to our strategic vision as a district.
Well, Katie, we do
Agreed.
have some IB expertise in the district. And what I'd like to do is grab a week or two, circle wagons with them, reach out to IB and map out at least, at the 50,000 foot level, what that journey might look like, right? So, and that can help us, because I mean, like I've done the work that Joe Ellen is describing, and and it's work, but that's the nature of this curriculum, this thing we call curriculum, right? It's got to be in a constant refresh cycle. It's got to be in a constant analysis cycle, and that sort of thing. I think we could, in a relatively short time, have a sense of what it might take to become an IB district if we were to decide we want to walk that path. I don't think that's a 3 or 4 month sit around and study the project. A lot of the information's on the IB website. And, I was looking at it, like I said, 4 or 5 years ago with some seriousness and some serious conversation around that. And so I do think with some of our teachers who have done the IB thing at the high school and done it well, we can start there, and we can start at the same time by reaching out to IB, and we can put together a presentation to the board and the community about what does it mean, what does it look like to become an IB district.
And I think all of Joe Allen's work will help us understand that better as well, because we have now a much better sense of where we actually are. So I see that as really important to any kind of decision in this. It will help us, get there one way or another. So I would love to see that. Thank you.
Okay.
Somebody else also agree? No?
No, agreed. I agree completely.
And to give a teeny historical perspective, about 18 years ago, the middle school and the elementary school did look at early years and middle years IB. At the time, they were in a different position from where they are now. They were basically meeting more kids' needs probably and more subjects back then. And so it was felt that back then, the middle years program did not have a lot to offer. And so the decision was made not to make the change at the primary grades. But we're in a completely different scenario now. And so I think that it could not hurt to see, is the work more or less or the same to reach the final goal with IB versus the Joe Ellen plan. I think it's reasonable.
There you go, Joe Ellen. The Joe Ellen.
Oh, the Joe Ellen plan.
I like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
One last comment, and then I'll leave it be. I'm also curious in the context of what might be an extended online possible model, as we may need to shift back and forth depending on how COVID is going, and who knows how long that will last. If kind of the evaluation of the flexibility of using an IB type of curriculum going that way versus sort of the go it alone stuff where we're constantly having to reevaluate our curriculum based on, who's in school and who's not in school. I don't know if this is, no one knows how long any of this is going to last, but I certainly think it's a consideration to consider the next generation of educational models in our new paradigm as part of the decision-making process.
I think that's a really good point, Katie, and I can tell you that, increasingly the conversation is around maintaining the flexibility and increasing the flexibility. And, COVID will probably end someday, but it could be, a few months down the road. It could be a couple more years. And, they're already saying the vaccines, all of a sudden it's elusive. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm just a 5th grade school teacher. So at the end of the day, we have to prepare for that. But also the lessons that we're learning, Sarah Strasburg was telling me she saw a great blended lesson today where the teacher was popping back and forth between online and in the classroom. She said it was just phenomenal. And, a week ago, we were really struggling with it. And, and it's not every class is fantastic, but this one was. And the more we can build on that, the better. But I do think downstream, the model's going to change because of COVID, and there's going to be this online presence. And I know IB has addressed this, and but everybody's still kind of getting better at it too. So I do think online learning is definitely not going to go away after COVID goes away. So anyway, are we good with
Yes, thank you, Joellen, so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you for giving me as much time as you did. I didn't anticipate being with you as long, and am honored and delighted to be there. And Dave and Theron, you know how to get me when you're ready for our next steps. I'm ready to be a support to you.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Really,
Bye.
bye. Okay, a couple more things for me, if I may, Susan. First of all, I do want to introduce and welcome to the district Dan Bloomberg. Today was his first day, and he hit the ground running.
Welcome, Dan.
And Dan, would you like to say a couple words real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Dave, for the introduction. Really looking forward to getting started, and really appreciate the warm welcome from those of you that I've had the pleasure of interacting with so far. Looking forward to more good times.
Yeah. Well, I know on behalf of our team, we're really glad you're here, Dan, and thanks for joining the team. Looking forward to having you with us in the trenches. So, all right, good. Thanks, Dan. A couple more things. Liza, I made a couple of slides. Do you have access to those real quick?
Let me take a look. Via
It's kind
email, you send them?
To frame things out. While Eliza's looking, I do want to thank my AEA colleague for actually kind of tapping many of the things that I wanted to touch on this evening. Obviously, the big news this week is, trying to get our own COVID testing launched. We had, last time I checked, 147 staff members had signed up for testing tomorrow. So for those staff members on here, please, if you haven't signed up to get tested, it's voluntary, it's free. It takes about 20 seconds, non-invasive. It's basically a mouth swab. We have to thank, I know Katie's started driving this a little while back, and then, we had a couple of medical professionals get involved. And then most recently, Barry Romberg joined the team, and she had experienced a test out in Los Angeles that was free, non-invasive, took about 20 seconds to do. She got her results back in a really fast time. Came back to Aspen. I'm not quite sure whether she was talking to Katie or Jeannie Siebold, Dr. Siebold. But next thing you know, they're talking to CDPHE and Curative, the testing lab. And the next thing we had was a real conversation around testing in the district. So we're just really excited that these citizens kind of came together and put together this package. And then, we've met with Pickens County Health, of course, numerous times. And, so we're testing staff tomorrow. Again, for the staff, it's voluntary. we're following the CDC guidelines around quarantining. We do know that COVID will probably come onto campus, and we're prepared for that. I want to be very clear. And if we have to quarantine, we have to quarantine. But we've all had lots of experience with remote learning, and we're getting more experience in it. And so we'll continue to learn that way when and if it happens. But I definitely want to say big thank you to those community members and their drive to get the testing into the district. And it's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're the first school district in all of Colorado to offer universal free testing, which is terribly exciting. As Katie referenced, we've spent a lot of hours working on this. Looking forward to another deep layer of protection for our students and staff. And so that's pretty exciting. Let's see, we talked about the audit. And then the other thing, safe schools. Obviously, everybody knows about the incident that happened 2 Sundays ago. Incredibly unfortunate incident. And, so we've tightened up a number of the policies or procedures rather around who's in the building and when. Jorge Calderon has 2 shifts of custodian support running. So we basically cover the schools from 7 a.m. till 10:30 in the evening. We've scaled way back on the weekends. We don't have a lot of productions or sports or anything like that. So the custodial facilities crew aren't on staff then. He is working, Mr. Calderon is working in conjunction with Linda Warho around changing all the locks at the middle school and the elementary school. We're asking all staff to make sure that if you do come into the building to, have a colleague with you or notify a colleague when you come in and when you leave. We're hoping to get the keypads. So it'd be like a hotel where we can turn your key off when you part ways with the district, and we can turn it on when you start with us. So we have to get there. At the moment, there's just an incredible number of keys out in the community, which once we change those locks in the near future, that won't be a problem. The normal drills are being started up now that we're back in session. And, the monthly fire drills, the shelter in place drills, all of those have restarted. And Mr. Mulberry, with the help of the assistant principals, is jumpstarting a district safety team. There was an incredible audit done 2 or 3 years ago, and we're going to use that as kind of a starting point for the school safety work. So even though COVID is basically consuming most of our bandwidth, we are mindful of the fact that we're still running schools and they're full of children and adults. And so safety has to be our number 1 priority. So we will continue that work. And that, for the most part, sums up the superintendent's report. Any questions?
Hey, Dave, on the the property and building safety initiatives and tightening up as you just described, if you're deputizing any citizens or trying to put together a little bit of some additional support here and there, I'd be more than happy to support and assist. That's kind of in my in my lane, so to speak. So I can love to be a lieutenant somewhere if the case may be.
Well, Deputy Romero, I just want you to know we're always happy to have help and expertise, joining the conversation. I have to, and especially in Colorado, it's obviously an important topic in this state. And, we will certainly look forward to that. We will continue our work with the Sheriff's Department. We're working on revising and making more robust our MOU with the sheriff and the police department, the city's police department. And we're bringing in some of the things that some of the best practices from the field. This is something I've been studying since my first year as an administrator, when we had to remove all the bushes from around the school. So, it's been an interesting learning curve and continuing to learn about safe schools. So we are going after it, and definitely happy to deputize you, sir, and look forward to having your expertise at the table. Thank you. And that concludes my report.
Thanks, Dave. Jonathan, did
Thanks,
you have a
Dave.
question?
No, I just wanted to join Dave in thanking Katie and the group of parents who helped us out, and all the volunteers in getting this testing. I mean, it proves where there's a will, there's a way. And the same tenacity with that Katie sometimes asks questions in this meeting is the same tenacity that got that problem solved for all of us. So just thank you, Katie, and everybody else who was involved. It took an effort to get that done, and we're really appreciative.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And we will hopefully we're trying to do 2,000 tests this week. So the county is typically doing about 200 a week, and we're doing 2,000. So we have our hands full, but we may be calling on people for volunteers. We'll see. We might need a little help at some point. But thank you.
That's awesome.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
That'll make our positivity rate go down to 2%. If that. Hopefully, knock on wood.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, I think the important thing, there has been if you test it, they will come, the kind of Trumpian model of, but we'll find more cases if we test. Well, yeah, we might, but that's also why it's a layer of risk mitigation. So
Well, we'll have the information and we can act on it. That's what's important. That's great.
exactly. So no, we've had support throughout the community for this, and we're going to need to continue to support. In my board member update, I mentioned we're going to be going to AEF, because while this is a free testing protocol, we need staff to administer it. This is a lot of extra work. This is not something that long-term can be put on our current staff without some additional personnel. And right now, the plan is that volunteers are going to be doing a lot of the work. So I also know that's not sustainable. So we will be out there fundraising for some additional support for these hopefully temporary positions.
Okay. Other comments or questions, everyone? All right, Dave, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our financial update. Linda, hi.
Hello, thank you. I actually I'm getting some time. I won't have to talk like an auctioneer, I'm hoping, to this board meeting. We're just gonna have a couple things, just a few updates. I wanted to spend a little bit of time, because we spoke so briefly and so quickly about the extra duty pay related to COVID for employees. And really, the bottom line I wanted to get through on this is, the reason I brought this to your attention is we had multiple people turning in things for different rates. And I wanted to assure the staff that everybody gets paid the same rate. So we went back and reclassified some that were turned in their extra duty pay at $25 an hour to $40 an hour. So that was the first objective on this. The second is to get it out here in a public forum too, that we really hearsay or hearing something in a meeting doesn't set policy related to pay rates. So if there's a question, or if someone thinks they heard something in a meeting, it's always important to go to the source and go to either Dave or myself, Dr. Baugh or myself, and talk to us about it, and make sure that we're all on the same page, and we're paying people the right amount. And as I talked to Dr. Baugh about it, I said, because we had such varying rates, somebody had heard 40 at some time. Would he give his blessing to approve the $40? And he said yes. So we're all on that. The total cost of this was about $25,000, a little bit less to the district. So a lot of planning and a lot of work went in putting these curriculums together. And now I think we had a good understanding of the work that was done too. So there won't be questions when people turn in other supplemental extra duty pay. So that was the whole gist of my email or my my memo that I sent on that. So you don't have to, you're not voting for anything, you're not approving anything. I just wanted to make sure you're aware, and we'll put this in the mid-year budget modification. We'll see that. So
Great, thank you.
then the next piece of news I wanted to share, and I'm sorry for the lateness on this, but it's one of those things that, you know, we're getting data like even today and related to student count data. And there's a few things in Colorado, the way student count is done, that once again, Colorado takes a very simple concept that you would think and makes it a little difficult to understand. So I wanted to share some stuff with you that was in the budget, in our budget document that I sent out, and it's how I projected student enrollment count in there. So in the state of Colorado, the way it works is if you have declining enrollment, which almost all school districts have at this point, they do a 5-year average to kind of do a smoothing effect. So you don't take this drastic drop. So in my calculations of what we had, I thought we were going to get the smoothing average, or the average funded pupil count to be in the budget was going to be around 20. And it looks like it's going to be about 63. So even though we dropped 50 students in count, the smoothing effect is going to smooth us through for about 60 of, for 60. So we're going to drop maybe 6 to 10 students is what we're going to see in funding drop. So that is good news, in one respect, but just know that our plan, or our funded amount right now, is around 10,363. So let's say 10,400 per student that we lose. So that's lost in funding that we'll have. And then we'll reflect this too in the mid-year budget when we come back. And there, I wanted to include just a little drop on this too. And let me reemphasize that these are numbers that we're kind of pulling together and change on a daily basis. But I wanted to show how many rounds we're teaching, or how many teachers are like in first grade. So in first grade, when you have 5 FTE, that means 5 teachers or 5 rounds is the way it's defined. So then you can see your ratio of what your average student class size is. So to me, coming from a bigger city, I guess I see these as really low numbers and hard to sustain, in a long-term planning idea. But we do know that this will end eventually, and maybe we'll see some of those students come back into the classroom. I don't think if this were to end tomorrow and these students were to come back in, I think we can take extra students in each one of our classrooms. I don't think any staffing issues would evolve from that. So, and just to put those out and just know in numbers. And for example, like in kindergarten, I'll pick on those just because, we pulled K out of the classroom and to help out here centrally. Those 5 do not include K in there. So there are smaller class sizes that we're seeing, but yeah, every day is a new adventure, right? On bringing these kiddos back. And figuring out, making accommodations for teachers and how we're all the moving parts of the puzzle. The other thing I wanted to explain is I only went through 8th grade because 9th grade, I actually we didn't see that much of a decline of enrollment in the high school. And once we get into the high school, it gets really hard to do this kind of modeling, you know, and we had talked about, Dr. Ball and I have talked a little bit about, you know, maybe we'll grab like an English, we'll grab one subject matter in the high school and do a ratio that way. So we can do some budget planning. I want to use this for budget planning going forward. So, and that, one more update, quick update. I did receive on Friday late, one new application for the employee housing loan program. So the way we did that in the past is it just needs to be approved by 2 board members. And so we'll do it. It doesn't have to be in the public setting here. I'll send in their application and all their information to, if you don't mind, I'll just do it to, I think we did Susan and Dwayne last time. And just send it to you two, and we'll take it from there.
Sounds good. That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any questions for Linda?
Just when we get to our GP, no, what is
Yes.
it? GP, the committee structure one, whichever number
Yeah.
it is.
GP
There
seven.
is a employee housing loan committee.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. We did. Yeah.
So, and I think it's on another one of our planning things about who is on that. And I'm
Yeah.
not sure that's consistent. So just, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm not sure that we're being consistent about execution of that policy.
We can look and see who we put on that committee in our board. Maybe Eliza, if you could look at that under our board duties that we decided in December. We're about to switch them again, but and then just let Linda know, because that we should probably stay
Yeah, we'll
consistent.
do it on this one. That would be great. Thank you, Katie. I forgot about that. I didn't
Yeah.
see that, but forgot.
Yeah, I've been on there for a while, and I'm happy to pass the torch. I think Katie may be right. I think we actually did maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm on there. So just go ahead.
So Linda, on the counts, I just want to make sure I underscore your comment. So we had projected an enrollment for budget year 2020, 2021. That is to say the current budget fiscal year. We had projected back in June and filed that just as a preliminary number of 1651. We're certifying as of the last month 1,600. But because of the smoothing effect and the kind of the averaging effect as you described, it helps soften the transitions and to smooth out so that districts are not on a severe roller coaster. That calculation yields about a net negative of about 10 students on the count, correct? At roughly $10.4 thousand a student. And you see the trend line, and I appreciate you putting the trend line. So we see some of the kind of year over year movements here, clearly getting smaller.
Yes.
Clearly getting smaller, and not just over the last 12 months, but over the last 4 years. I think that's a fairly understood fact, but it's helpful to kind of reinforce that to the community. And charter schools actually getting larger.
They are.
Charter schools getting larger in terms of total population. And because I'm married to a charter school student, I know that their student-teacher ratios are internally consistent with what you're representing here for the district as a whole. That's also helpful to know, back to your earlier comment about the positive look of our ratios today. But it's an interesting trend, And as you said, it's going to kind of see how we play this out over the next several years. But I really appreciate your work and this analysis to give us a really clear and simple, simple to understand position as to where we are. So thank you.
You're welcome. I know there was a lot of anxiety around this, let's say, because remember we built these numbers in April, and then all craziness broke loose. I'm trying to keep my language right here,
That's
but all
right.
craziness broke loose, and we thought we were going to have this huge amount of enrollment growth. So, but we decided not to adjust the budget, which I'm so thankful now that we didn't. But we did staff a little bit towards that, but we have lost some staff. So I think we just have all these moving parts going on, and it's a stressful time, and I don't want to add more stress onto this, but I think we're going to be okay. We just need to, keep our tight stewardship hats on and manage our budget here. But a lot of things have happened since we built our original projections. We went through a whole loop-de-loop on the roller coaster, I think.
Indeed.
That's true. And we appreciate you keeping up with all of those loops without, getting off.
Or falling out.
Yep. Yeah. So I know that's been a challenge, and I appreciate it. So we'll look forward to your mid-budget report to see how all that kind of falls out.
Yes, and the other thing, we've started this fab group together, and we're going to start digging in next meeting, which I think is next Monday, I believe. That we meet, and we're going to start diving in on this. We've got so much work ahead of us in this group, and they are going to be an incredible resource for me.
Awesome.
To help plan this budget, and also to just help move forward with future audits and all this. So I'm excited about it.
Well, I'm so glad you've got a committee. That's a big step. I really appreciate that. That's good.
Yeah, they've been awesome. They've been great.
Okay, anything else for Linda? I think we'll move on to board member updates. Do you all have any just brief updates? Dwayne?
I think it's just been posted. It's fine. Posted up the comments like the school principals as well. I appreciate their posting their updates.
Yep.
I posted too, but the one thing I have to say in the public meeting is vote, vote, vote.
That's what I was going to say. Tomorrow, please go vote.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We approved some ballot measures at the board level. So I encourage the community to vote on those measures.
Yep. That was going to be my comment. So anyone else have anything else? We'll move right on. Let's go to our 6.1 policy updates. And I'm going to find them so that I can talk about them in order here. All right, let's look at OE5 as the first update. And Susie, you can give us any details we might need, but it looks like it's changing the text just to include digital platforms and digital materials in each of
Yeah,
these.
there might be one more place where it says textbooks and not digital, and it kind of goes without saying that really digital is kind of at least as important as textbooks, but
Yep.
So
anybody have any questions or comments about that one?
No, I just think let's go ahead with these changes, but I found the link that they mentioned in the other one, so we'll probably have to wrap up this one with that curriculum thing at some time in the future.
Oh, there's another mention of digital or not digital in The curriculum?
No, just in the
what you're saying?
recommendations from the curriculum study, she recommended
right.
that us getting
Oh,
together
yes.
a full-on curriculum policy, and obviously
Yes.
this will become part of that.
Yep, you're right. And we need to draft one, but I think we need more information before we can.
Yeah, and there are
Do
some
that.
links in that report on the last page, Susan, if you go to it, and there has actually a sample policy.
Oh, great.
So that we
Okay.
can use as a baseline.
Yep, we could try that out. Okay. So noted, we'll make these changes, but this will come back with additional bullet point for the curriculum management plan, and et cetera. Any other questions or comments about OE5? Let's go to OE10, which is financial administration. Susie, this is, I'm not quite sure I understand.
So why don't I just, I actually thought that when we approved the budget with Linda in several times, we just kind of, among all the other funds that we approved, for example, we approved the Aspen Family Connections got $100,000 more this year than last year from the AEF. This is just one example where we didn't really ever discuss it at the board level. I'm sure we would have approved it or agreed with it. It doesn't need our approval. But I think the board would want to know that we've increased, that we would just want to have a discussion about both 17, 18, the AEF, how much, why we're increasing 100% from 0 to 100 for one fund. I just thought we should be aware of how much we're giving, how much AEF is our so number 17 is AEF, number 18 is APEF. And I remember Elizabeth Parker presented with us at a board meeting for APEF what they recommended that we distribute the funds towards. But I thought
So that's actually backwards. So we say, hey, APEF, this is what we would like to spend the funds on. And it's based on what the ballot language said to approve those funds that go to APEF. And then they say, okay, we approve that. Does that make sense? So
it makes sense, but we never actually had a discussion in my 3 years on the board. Maybe we'll have it in year 4, but we never actually discussed these funds. We accepted that the superintendent had made the recommendation to AEF to increase funding towards AFC by 100,000. We listened to the APEF. I felt like we never had a discussion about how the funds are being spent. I'm sure we would have agreed with.
But we don't have much control over it. It's actually money that is, first of all, for AEF, it's money that someone says, I want to give money and I want it to go to this certain thing. We don't have control over that.
Well, our MOU says the superintendent's discretion, the MOU for AEF.
There are some non-discretionary, there are some earmarked funds that we receive from AEF. And each year, what has happened in the past, the superintendent sits down with the AEF director and says, of these estimated funds that will not be earmarked for anything specific, these are the things that we would like to spend them on. I believe is how it has worked in the past.
The executive director of AEF told us that they distribute the funds based on the superintendent's recommendations. That's what she told us.
Some of them, not all. I mean,
right.
Go ahead.
Those funds not subject to an earmark or a direct classification as Susan's describing, some of them. And obviously that's a dialogue between AEF, but ultimately that's an avenue of funds that has much more flexibility because it's truly a organic fundraising exercise. And then the APEF, as we know, has got statutory kind of enabling language that was presented to the community for approval. And so that
It has to be in those 5 buckets.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
both, and that's Snowmass Village and we need to add Snowmass Village to this actually too. So I'm going to give that language to Eliza. I mean, it'll be the same as the last 2, but we should just add Snowmass Village Public Education Fund and an MOU with them as well.
So Susie, I'm thinking the FAB, what GP, whatever, 7 that we're going over next, we talked to the budgeting process in that policy that might address some of your concerns.
I think you're right. And I put in my notes, review with FAB first. And I think that will resolve much of this. It just comes as a surprise to me in a big budget when we're looking at 30 different funds or 20 different funds, and one of them has increased the amount by 100% or whatever 0 to 100,000 turns out to be. I think that's 100%. But anyway, it increases the amount that our superintendent, or based on what the executive director said, I don't think that was a discretionary fund that we were talking about at the time. I think it was, I don't want it to come as a surprise and just we're voting that we approve the whole budget report when one teeny little item we've never even discussed, which turns out to be quite a big item.
I mean, I guess I would say in that particular item, I don't believe that it was, we decided to spend money on this instead of this. It was additional dollars that both the superintendent and AEF went out and looked for to fund that particular.
Well, for example, if we, as one of the board members mentioned a few meetings ago, if we had known that maybe some of that 100,000 was going to fund supervised learning, for example, for teachers' kids during COVID, maybe we would have wanted $5 per kid to go towards parents, students, kids, children who also need supervised learning, who didn't have access to it. I think Katie has referenced these parents who also have big needs that we might have been able to address in one fell swoop had we had a brief discussion about some of the uses of the funding. And maybe it was never mentioned as non-discretionary funding, that $0 to $100,000 increase to Aspen Family Connections. It was just one of many funds that we just kind of voted in one foul swoop without ever discussing how it was all being spent.
So I guess I would ask Dave and Linda about how they think that kind of should work, I guess.
I'm going to step in here for just a little bit. When you all vote on a budget, you're really voting on the appropriation page, the big page. You're not voting on the line items, the specific line items that make that up. So on this one for Aspen Family Connections, Aspen Educational Foundation said, hey, Aspen School District, we're giving you $500,000 and 100,000 of that has to go to Aspen Family Connections. When they do that, that's the way I have to support it in the budget, because they are giving us the money for an intended purpose. I have really not, it's kind of outside my wheelhouse or really any knowledge over whether it was a single donor that gave that money to Aspen Educational Foundation, or if it was something that was decided within the foundation, I just have the responsibility to make sure that Aspen Family Connection gets the $100,000. And that's how it was presented in the budget. It sounds like, though, there's kind of more to this story kind of happening that I was unaware of until just tonight, that Aspen Family Connections was using that in a way that maybe other people thought that some people had some bad feelings about, or didn't, or didn't know that that money was going to be used for that. That's something I really can't speak to, but it probably is a good idea that we have those kinds of things addressed maybe in the FAB piece of it, that when the FAB is looking over helping me build this budget, that they are a little more connected in understanding what the different foundations are giving us money for.
And I think that would resolve this, and we don't even have to change the policy if we just do that, what you just described.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what the changes we made in the policy to the next policy, and then maybe come back to it, because I think we have spent in the FAB quite a bit of time talking about what the current budget process is and how we can add more transparency to that process, and make sure that that all the steps are happening, that we kind of backward mapped, okay, when do we need to approve the budget, and let's go back to when all these steps need to happen. We didn't do that in writing yet, but it was more of a learning exercise with Linda to understand. And then we formulated this policy based on the intent of trying to provide more visibility to that process, more understanding of what's coming in, as Linda said, and how to make sure that we're accounting for it in a way. And that's a big change that Linda's made in the last year, that we're accounting for things in a way that we can actually track it a lot better than we used to be able to. So I think it might be helpful to review that as we continue this conversation.
Yeah, I would be willing to drop my proposed changes to these policies in exchange for everything that Linda and Katie have just proposed.
And I think it actually, one thing that would be helpful for us is an understanding of how those funding things come to us and with what strings attached, as well as, when we're dealing with, I think, and maybe I'm not understanding fully either, but Aspen Family Connections is not fully funded by us. It's it's also funded by the city. And so for us to know how
16 agencies, I think there's 16 agencies that support AFC.
So we don't have full control over that, obviously, because there's a whole lot of other parties that are coming into that. So I think just an understanding of how those things are working could be helpful for us going forward.
Yeah.
And we can schedule that maybe before we do the budget conversation so that we're all on the same page. Okay, let's go on to where are we? GP7. And there are quite it's rewritten very nicely, and I do have just a couple of suggestions to add in there, and maybe I'll just throw those in there real quick before we ask questions or talk about it. In point number 8, as it goes through, to consult with the superintendent and CFO to ensure that all accounting and management reporting systems are in place. I think we should also put in internal control systems. So I would say that all accounting, management reporting systems, or management reporting and internal control systems are in place and properly maintained. And then potentially timely preparation of all financial reports required by the BOE, state, local, and federal governmental agencies. So that's just to kind of make sure we're including all of the reports that need to be done. And I know those are also things that maybe should be in our other, maybe OE 10, but, and are actually, I think for the most part. But I was thinking maybe that we should include them here. Any thoughts on or comments on any of the other items? Dwayne, did you have something?
I'm totally okay with what you just described as additional edits to this proposed set of revisions. I do appreciate the revisions. In total, there's a lot of additional, I believe, support and an effort towards strengthening the overall financial system and also providing, as Katie said at the outset, more transparency. So that's cool. I would humbly suggest items 5, 6, 7, 8, instead of saying to consult, I would just wordsmith and just suggest that we use the word advise. And I know that sounds like just, kind of a difference without a distinction, but I'm going to try to take some of there's some sort of implied authority here that's coming with the word consult. It's just, we're going to be advising these professionals within the district to do certain things. We're not going to be providing, official consultancy. That's got a different connotation in my view, at least.
Mhm.
And then number 9.
I'm fine with that. Are you, Katie? Is that, yeah.
Yeah, that's easy, right?
Yeah,
And
I'm fine.
Sorry.
I'm not trying to be
Yes, that's
overly,
fine.
I'm not trying
I'm
to be
fine with
dis-
everything everyone said so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then number nine, under the same vein, the same climate here. So provide additional oversight to the BOE. I would prefer that say something to the effect of, provide additional inputs, provide additional guidance, but provide additional oversight is starting to hand off some of our authority at the BOE. But I truly do understand and appreciate the intention here. And that is to say, to the extent the district takes on any indebtedness, which obviously is to generate proceeds to make capital improvements, asset improvements, manage and operate.
How about recommendations, Dwayne?
Yeah, provide recommendations and guidance.
And I think, the oversight piece should be on the shoulders of all board members. So
That's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
I don't even want to send the signal that we're trying to, and I know that's not your intention. So this is, I get it. It's just kind of cheesy wordsmithing, but I think the intent is sincere. We're just trying to make sure that no one reads this and says, what the hell is the board doing?
No,
trying to-
the intention clearly here is that
Right.
this committee is going to dive into the details and provide the reporting necessary to the board each and every month should we have the proceeds from the bond and not.
However, but you got to watch this though. The community is also paying other people. The community is also paying other people, namely people within the district organization, to provide that governance and oversight. And to the extent that they cannot, because of a certain expertise or skill set that's not born within the school district administration, then it is proper for the district as an organization to hire outside professional consultants, i.e. An owner's representative as a way of example, as opposed to relying on the FAB to provide that skill set.
Right.
FAB members, like all of our volunteer committees, they come and go, which is perfectly natural and not a critique. It's just an acknowledgement. So I just want to make sure that this is internally coordinated without how I see the asset management role playing out. We will need an asset manager. We will need an owner's representative. We will need professional planners, architects, engineers, and other specialists to the extent we do vertical construction and development at any point. We'll need all that. And I don't expect Linda or Dave or Theron to necessarily have that expertise. And I don't expect FAB members to have to shoulder that load.
No, I think that the intention was to help dialogue with that person to help look at, or company, whomever that might be,
So recommendations, guidance, inputs, but not additional oversight. So
Sure.
we'll-
Yeah.
No, I was thinking of it as more like not an approval, but someone to, like the watchdog organization, to make sure that the district is spending these funds in the way the bond intended it to be spent. So it's not that they would be doing the debits and the credits and the reporting as much as more just an oversight to make sure we're fulfilling the requirements that the bond said.
They can guide and they can advise, but Linda, you know better than we that they can't be, kind of an oversight authority. They just cannot take that position on. And I'm not trying to split hairs.
Agreed.
Just culturally,
Well,
it just
No,
kind
It makes
I
sense,
think
Dwayne.
you're right, Dwayne. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right, Dwayne. I mean,
And
it's the
mostly
board's-
because they're not going to be held accountable. We are.
Yeah.
I mean,
committees make recommendations, the accountability is at the board level. That's
Yeah.
Right.
it, period.
This is a light year ahead. So thank you very much for the advance, right? The work effort. This is really strengthening this part of the organization's, capabilities. So, and we get to lever a lot of, I think, motivated and capable community members who want to pitch in and put a shoulder to it. That's awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
We have a nice team that's been assembled, and we're happy for more members as well. We are diving into some really gritty details with Linda, so it's like she needs somebody to talk to about this stuff, so it's good.
Yeah, those poor people.
So I have some very mundane and mostly typo suggested changes that I didn't notice before in number 3, back to the DAC, if I may.
Mhm.
So, so number 3 is DAC, and number 5 under A, 3A5, it has this weird typo. It says assessment tools that are not research-based and have not been proven effective. And I don't, that's not how the statute reads. I went back to the House bill and the Senate bill and looked at section 2022. Anyway, they don't say all the, now that's just, I think it's just typos. So I'd like to, take out that are not research-based and have not been proven effective. And I can meet with Eliza and clarify the wording that comes from the statute, but I just thought we should fix that.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. And then similarly, in section 3B, where it says what the membership, it says membership minimum appointed by the board, but the statute gives us the option of appointing or approving, meaning we don't have to appoint them. They can choose their own members and we just approve. So I would like to change it to appointed or approved.
Yeah, I think that's good. And that's what we've done in the past. Is
Exactly.
really just approve.
And then same with 3D.
Well, maybe since we got a lot of changes to this puppy now, can we get those all worked in and then bring them out back?
Yeah,
We'll bring it all
there's
back.
no way we'll
as
be
a-
able to approve it.
that's fine. That's fine. I
I
just wanted
think
to
we're
point,
not going to approve tonight. We'll bring it back as a consent next time.
just mostly typos.
Okay.
But we just need
I
to
agree with that.
include approved instead of approved and appointed.
Okay.
To that front, who's ever doing that, is that you, Eliza?
Yes.
Yes.
There, under the FAB section, I think there might have been a couple things that were in parentheses that probably need to be removed. Like, the committee shall consist of no less than 5 members. I don't why it's 5 members instead of just 5 members. So,
Full flexibility, will do.
Okay. Any other comments on GP7? So Eliza, if you need specifics about what anybody wanted to add or change, if you could just reach out in an email so that we get this ready for our next meeting where we can approve it on the consent agenda.
Will do. Thanks.
Okay. Let's move to 6.2. Dave has provided his proposed goals. We also have put in here our policies for evaluating the superintendent. And so what I think we should look at is how we want to use Dave's goals, and he's provided also action steps and ways to assess some of these goals, how we weave that into the superintendent evaluation and just come up with some a procedure and some timing and that sort of thing. So maybe we'll start, Dave, if you want to just go through your goals with us. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I was clicking around and all the stuff.
I know.
So happy to go through the goals. There's 6 basic ones. They may have evolved a little bit this evening.
Yeah,
But
always.
yeah, well, so goal number 1, and one of the things that this board has talked with me since before I was hired was around, curriculum and language arts and mathematics and alignment and that sort of thing. And I think there was a general sense that this needed some TLC. So I made that my first goal. I don't know that I should read it. It's all
No.
there.
Yeah.
Public information. And I tried to think, like, how can I, prove, if you will, that we're working on these things. So that's kind of the general format. I tried to bake in a statement of need, put in some of the action steps and some of the artifacts and assessment so that the board would know that your superintendent is trying to address these issues. So, I've done a number of curriculum audits and used them to help improve instruction, the instructional experience for the students, which is really what I think, needs to be at the core of everything we do, helping the students' lived experience improve. So goal number 1, we've actually been working on this since before I was officially starting. We began looking for people to do a curriculum audit even prior to July 1. So partly because, the clock's ticking, and by that, I mean, for us to make a difference for next school year, we have to be really working on it this school year. So, we're kind of on timeline, in my opinion, as to being able to have new curricular materials in place and PD in place for next year, with trying to do some foundational work this year. So that's goal number 1. Goal number 2, communication remains a challenge. For a small school district, there's a lot going on and stuff kind of comes out sometimes. We are using a new protocol where we try to communicate to staff first and then to our greater community of, families and guardians, and then, any kind of press release. It is hard sometimes because things evolve, especially in board meetings, and sometimes we generate stories here that catch staff by surprise in the morning paper. But overall, I think there's a lot of work to be done on district's communication. Our website's archaic. Still haven't gained control of our social media. So, it's we have a lot of basic work to do on the district's communication. And I've already talked with Dan Bloomberg about helping out with that. He's had a lot of training in this and done a lot of work in other placements. So I'm looking forward to working with Dan around this as well. And Eliza is helping out as well. So goal number 2, increase our communication, our visibility, our marketing, our brand, that sort of thing. Goal number 3, the comprehensive plan for vision and mission revision in alignment with both the board's recently developed vision as well as the strategic plan work that has been done. And this is not just a sign on a wall. It's about a number of things, including, in this one, the action steps are really important, and we'd have to do some collaborative work across the district with families, with faculty. That's part of that, sort of a team around that. And there's been a lot of work done, but tying it all together is important. But then also making sure that actionable steps are taken to address leadership development, climate and culture. And again, from a constructive student-centered perspective, I think is huge. So there's routine, updates and things like that. And, we've been having conversations around those things. Goal 4, assess educational and organizational practices and propose recommended alignments for coaching and leadership development with articulated responsibilities. I think coaching and leadership go hand in glove. And I think that's huge and important, and that will really impact both climate and culture. As leaders are feeling comfortable with their mission as well as their vision, the district's vision, and they'll know whether they're in alignment with where we're trying to get to. So, and if they are, then they can really lean in and put their shoulder to the millstone. And if they're not in alignment, then they can go, oh, okay, it's not a great fit. I guess I better look for somewhere else. So, and it's all about that. So I think that really helps structure it. And I think coaching is huge and important for leadership development. And I know I continue to access a coach, for my own personal growth. And even though I'm over a decade into this position, I have miles to go before I'm happy with my performance. So, and the coach is a huge help for that. Goal number 5, Theron is helping create and leading the work for the district-wide equity team. But this has sort of been a goal of mine since before I got here. And I think, in conversations with the BOE, that this is a huge part of who I am as a leader. And I think this is really important. I mean, particularly in light of current events, but even before then, I was working on this, and this is, I believe, a core goal for me moving forward to ensure that this happens. So goal number 6, because we're about 2 goals too many at this point. It's professional growth and development. And so I think, as the lead learner in the district, it's important for me to model it, to walk it, to live it. And so I had the opportunity to be a part of a new pilot through the Aspen Institute. They have a Hearst Leadership Seminar for non-elected leaders. And my goal is to complete that, even though there's a lot of reading involved and participation in this online class with other non-elected leaders, which is a fantastic way for me to actually get to meet folks from across the valley. So
That's so great. I'm in the elected leaders.
Oh, there you go. Cool. So is that your goal number 6 too, Susan?
Yes, it is. It's actually, it might be higher up. No.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Those are the 6 goals. In looking over the documentation and processes that you have, that they're fairly robust and well articulated. They're different than what I'm used to. And, I certainly would like to request that we, have an executive session at January, early February, for the purpose of, a mid-year feedback, mid-year evaluation on the goals.
Yeah.
And perhaps we use your forms and see how well they fit in other roles. I would provide, the documentation, almost a portfolio, if you will, to the board to say, here's what we've been doing on this, here's what we've been doing on that, here's what we were doing on number 3, that sort of thing. So, it would, I think that there's a happy marriage between the two systems. And I'm not that familiar with your system, so I'm happy to go through that if the board is comfortable with that. Up to you folks in that respect.
So, yeah, I'd love to hear what other board members think about, and I mean, Katie and Jonathan, you haven't gone through actually the process before.
No.
But it
form
was
is
large.
outdated, right? I mean, the form with all the, is this the most recent one, the board superintendent relationship annual summative evaluation form? That's the most recent iteration of it?
Yeah. So, and normally what we would be doing is we would be looking at that right around this time frame, probably earlier actually, for the previous year, and looking at the superintendent performance for all of those items for the previous year. And what was the idea was that if the organization is performing well in all of these things that we monitor through the year, then that means that the superintendent is doing well. And so that, feeds into his evaluation. That, I would say, that was not always all that we considered. And so we would also write up an evaluation with some feedback and some things that we would like to see be different. And that's sort of how we've done it in the past. But we did not measure anyone, like a superintendent's goals or their work towards those goals. It was sort of all what you had actually achieved for the district at that point. And I think that's a bit of a mistake, because I think the incentive should be to work hard and find ways to improve and to make progress towards that.
Well, I guess what I would say is, it seems like the vast majority of these goals, even if we were to talk about them in January, there's a lot of stuff out that's pre-existing conditions. And I think I'm personally more interested in the changes that are measurable based on Dave's goals, rather than legacy issues that he may not have been able to address yet because he's got stuff he's addressing first. So like the ding-em on, the district calendar that he hasn't had any input yet. Well, I guess we're going to talk about it later, but to me that doesn't make sense. In a short term, I think with a new superintendent, one would want to evaluate based on the current scenario, not a bunch of old stuff.
And so I think that's very fair. And I think we should at this point also consider how this is going to look on an ongoing basis, so that, everybody can we can get on the same page about what we do want to look at when we will have, a year's or two's worth of data and information to work with. So that's why I put those two policies in there, because I think it's something that we need to kind of come up with a plan and some framework that we would use going forward. Anyone else have thoughts?
Just one other thought on the form is like, do we even use Park anymore? Isn't it CMAS now? And so I think at the very least, if we're going to evaluate based on these policies, we need to update this to be reflective of what we currently do.
Yeah. That seems funny that that's in there, but yes, I agree.
It says 2016, 2017 also. So it's old.
I wonder if this is our most recent one. Anyway.
My suggestion would be to have Dave take a crack at this. And maybe just say if this is something that we should continue to worry about this year, given the current circumstances and where we are in a transitional stage and a lot of this stuff. I think what we want to talk about from a policy perspective, and then maybe sit down with one or two board members and then kind of go through that and say, and what I'm thinking of is, okay, OE10, financial administration. There's a monitoring policy. I don't know if we want to keep doing that way. And we also just changed it to include a bunch of stuff for about one. I guess we didn't change that. We changed our policy.
OE7, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, are we still going to monitor that in the way it's been traditionally done, or should we just, rework it and not look at it this year? I think that would be a good first step, and then sit down with two board members and discuss that, and then try and bring it back to the board and say, this is probably the way for this year that we're going to change this, understanding that we don't have a new system in place and we need to give Dave an objective and clear evaluation process. So that would be my suggestion. And then, if we come up with the clear goals that we want, and we're all in agreement on the things that are in those goals, then I think that's the way to move forward. Because I see very little value add in having Dave look at OE9 and make a copy paste of the way it was done in the past, and where it's just basically a lot of affirmative statements that really didn't mean much, and then got to check. It's like the district will have a solid financial planning process, and they would write, then the statement after that would be, the district has in place a sound financial planning process, and that's what would get approved. And I don't know that there's a lot of value in that, to be quite honest.
I don't mean go through each. I mean, in our consideration that each of these areas should be, I just don't want to lose touch with, that at some point we thought all of these things were very important. And so I understand your idea about going through the motions of monitoring, and I think that seems not that valuable. But I think that I just don't want to lose sight of things that, the beauty of having policies and monitoring them is that you don't forget, from one year to another that, oh shoot, did we even check to see if, there were internal controls going on, or whatever it is. I mean,
Yeah.
So
Well, that was my suggestion, Susan, that Dave take a look at it and see what he thinks about it and what
Yeah.
value add from there. And there's probably a lot of stuff that we could still maybe monitor, but it might not necessarily be a part of the superintendent's evaluation. So that we could say, hey, I mean, it's like audit reports. You have to give a lot of affirmative statements that say, I'm not committing fraud, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, but nobody actually rates me on that. It's just, you have to do it. So
While he's looking at ESR 5, can you look at all of them and see if they're which ones are kind of redundant with other things that we're doing? And
I think that seems like a lot to ask Dave to do right now.
maybe some weekend.
okay, well then maybe we should just put it on hold and just go with the goals. I mean, to me, the most important thing is the goals and what we're going to do to move the organization from A to B. So that's my personal bent on this. And I actually have some comments about the goals once we finish the policy discussion here.
Dwayne, anything? One second.
Off of mute, sorry. Dave, I appreciate the composition here. I definitely appreciate how that you have created a certain tone that's kind of organizational focused and leadership by example focused, and really faces up with the community well. And I get through all of the statements, all the initiatives, especially the professional development and the equity piece, I get a real strong and positive sense that the community at large is definitely going to resonate with that. So I don't want to try to piecemeal that. I heard your suggestion of at some point allowing us in an executive session to kind of conduct an informal review, perhaps even setting the stage of some of the alignment has been discussed here between the policies and some of the work product that you produced to date. I think that gives us a chance to kind of get closer together in objectives and intention and really understanding some of the backstory of where, what stands behind the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. I think that's helpful. I do believe that some level of your opinion of the policies that serve as the guideposts for some of your performance evaluations. Clearly, we do need some of your opinion on that. And I think you're getting the tone from the board here that we're not, by no means are we bound by the letter of these stated policies, but we do see and know that there is structural benefit, and there's a lot of thought behind this. And in the current context, it might seem overwhelming to try to come back and look at this structure of policies while we're almost working in an emergency condition. Actually, we are. Mm-hmm. So, we have to focus on the emergencies right now, but keep a mindful eye on trying to get some alignment between these policies and making that they're relevant. I think that's probably the best word, for me at least. That we have to make sure that these policies are still relevant to what we believe and understand the community really wants education to look like. And I'll finish with this comment. The team, you and the team that you have organized all the way up and down the organization, all the way through it, including all the service support staff, you're composing a team that gets that. And I think we're in really good shape, even though we're working within an emergency. I think we're still in really good shape for the long haul. Tonight doesn't feel like the right night to try to make an action on these particular draft, these policy statements and the congruence with your goals. So I think this is a start, not the finish. Thanks.
Well, I'll propose this, Susan. Yeah, if I'm happy to sit down and hammer on some of this stuff with Dave, and also help to work up a way that we can make the goals into an objective measurement system, and have some kind of quote unquote grade come out of all this, because that's at the end of the day what you're looking for, based on what gets accomplished. So I'm happy to help Dave with the framework for that, and then also give input onto suggestions, and then the board can approve them or not as to what I think. If we should have the OE8, no, that's a bad one. We need but to give OE8 as an example, that policy needs to be completely reworked. And so my suggestion there would be, we don't have time to do that right now. So I would suggest not necessarily monitoring it and focus on a couple key actions that I think we need to do, like work on the climate, get a salary schedule comparison done, things along those lines, as opposed to putting a lot of energy into redoing the policy. Well, but I would be happy to do that. But
I'd like to say though that I think having one thing that seems to have been missing from management of the superintendent in the past is clear articulated goals. And I think it's really important to understand, at least publicly, Dwayne, maybe not. This is a public.
I was chuckling because the clear and articulated goals of the past literally felt like a binder. It was like we got just carpet bombed. So I'm just chuckling. It was so granular that it became unmanageable. It lost its relevance. It lost any connection.
I'm talking about a goal like assessing the curriculum. Like, we want to do that this year.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
You started the comment. Let's be clear though, Katie. You started the comment within the past. It was kind of like there was no real kind of monitoring of, it's like, yeah, perhaps, but it was a carpet bomb, and it was just like, holy crap, it's all over the place. And so you want to just, I mean, at the end of the day, you want to manage 3 to 5 things, right? You don't want to try to manage 35 things. It's a difference.
Well, I mean, honestly, in the past, it was hard to make goals if you couldn't say that you needed to work on anything. So, I mean, but
Yeah.
we will go from there. So,
Yeah, let me just finish what I was saying. So regardless of how I'm putting this, my intention is to say I really like the idea of having 4, 5, 6 things that we've agreed upon, or we will hopefully agree upon, for Dave to focus on in the short term while we get our act together as a board on the older policy stuff that OE1 is don't be a criminal or something to that effect. Yeah, we want that too, Dave. But do we need to really talk about that right now? I think in the short term, given the lack of history, that it's new, that we're saying, yes, we agree. If we do agree with, these are the things that we would like him to focus on and we'd like to evaluate him on in the short term. And then we can go from there and use this time, as Joanne says, when we're not in an emergency situation, to get more details around making sure, yes, all the bases need to be covered. You need to be managing your finance team. You need to be managing your facilities. You need like all of those things that aren't articulated in a few goals. Clearly, you need to pay the bills, right? And it's going to be a problem if you don't. But that's probably not what we need to talk about in the short term. So I would be fully supportive of these. I think these are the right goals to focus on in the short term. And I'm supportive of doing it in this method and working as we go through in a less emergency situation to get some of those other, necessary things lined up and updated.
I agree. I think that's a good path forward. Susie, do you have some
Yeah,
thoughts?
sorry. And Katie, we can always put all the ones that don't even need to be discussed in consent agendas and just vote, yes, we were not criminals this year. We can always put those things in consent agendas. Keep that in mind. As Jonathan and Dave rejigger all the policies, keep in mind, we don't have to discuss them all. We just want to know that they're accounted for.
Understood. Yeah. But having goals rather than just those to evaluate on, I think also makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So Dave, did you get sort of the gist of what we're thinking?
So let me try to paraphrase. These are my goals for this year. I can use these to move forward. I can use these to align up our direct reports. So I want, Theron's goals to look a lot like Dave's goals. I want the principal's goals to look a lot like Theron's goals. I want the assistant principal's goals to look a lot like the principal's goals. And that's part of the reason for being open and transparent and clear around what we're trying to achieve. While we're doing all that work, Jonathan and I will get together on weekends and Jonathan, gotcha. We'll get together at some point and we'll start working on the existing structures to make sure that they're clear and relevant. And the stuff that is pretty much pro forma, we'll move into a consent agenda. Obviously, we're going to make sure that Linda keeps paying the bills, because if you have me paying the bills, you've got me doing the wrong work. But I will be making sure that Linda has at least power most of the time and the ability to get through the snow most of the time to come pay the bills.
Perfect.
So is that close enough?
Yeah, I think so. And I would just say too that, I know that there is a lot going on. And so, if you and Jonathan do kind of a brief overview and, kind of set a goal for where we'd like to get with those policies and any revisions, that would be a good,
Oh, don't worry. I'll be brutal. I definitely will only keep the absolute necessary. So I do have some comments on the goals themselves. Are we ready to move on to that?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, so I think one that's, and I know it's implied, Dave, but I think we need to make sure it's clear to everybody and have it as a goal, is manage the organization through the crisis that we are currently still in. So I think that needs to be kind of like top and center. As you know, that's gonna still be, we're just now getting kids back into school part-time. And we're gonna have ups and downs and all this other stuff. So I think that's your number one priority. So we should at least put it on the paper. I mean, it is de facto the number one thing you'll be working on. So I would put that in there. Then the other thing that I would say that I want to see in here, and it's in here in a lot of different places, but there's really a thing about strengthening the organization and continuing to fill the roles. It's great to see Dan here. And so that's one additional key space we've got. Liz is also has a 1-year contract, so we need to make sure we get that position filled, and to continue to build the organization overall. So that's another key component on that. And then just for one in there that I think needs to be an objective from my perspective, and this is something we kind of need for the long-term strategic plan, is kind of how the salary competitiveness survey that we've been talking about for a while. I mean, I think we need to get that done this year. And then there's also the last one is more, when you came on board, all we've done is talk about COVID. So I think we also need to have a goal of making sure we're helping you integrate, we were supposed to have a transition plan, and we've made about all these grandiose ideas of all the things we were going to do to help you out and have a smooth transition plan. I guess you've had the transition plan by fire from COVID, but that doesn't mean there's a lot of things on there that we should still be doing. And we need to make sure that there's a good, at least plan in place to kind of fill in those other things that we just haven't had time to do since we've been in the COVID crisis here. So I think it's important not to lose sight of that, and then just, because COVID happened, we just forget about it. So I think that, and that's a board responsibility as well, but it also needs to be with you in there. Those would be my comments.
I will tell you, we haven't done a lot with the salary comparisons, and I will agree that the first two goals you brought up, Jonathan, to manage the organization through the crisis and continue to build the organization overall, sort of like breathing, I guess, for me, which is
Seems like a given at this point. Yeah.
it's like, what else would we do? So, and I'm not trying to minimize it. I guess, on my board, number one is, the opening and reopening for, the different levels of whatnot.
Yeah.
So, that's a fun part of my thinking. I just didn't 6. So
no, and I think, but remember, I think what you did, Dave, is you kind of thought about this as from today going forward, but we have to be integral in thinking of, no, it's since you came, all the things that have happened and what we've done and all the positions that have been filled, that's part of what you've done so far this year, and that needs to be evaluated as well, in my personal opinion. And I don't think it can't be like, oh, I know you just spent the last 4 months working basically every day of the week and on the weekends as well to get all this stuff going and to get us where we are now, and we're just going to forget about all that, and then we're going to worry about what happens with the communications plan.
Right.
That's just not,
That's fair.
that's not fair or equitable to you, Dave. So that's what
well, I appreciate that, Jonathan. I really do. Yeah, it's just, I guess I was thinking about the stuff that I haven't had time or bandwidth to really work on, like the communications plan. Liza and I've been trying to get together for a week and a half on that, and it just keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed. But it's someone keeps saying that which gets measured gets done. So I'm trying to make sure that this is getting measured so that it gets done. But I'm happy to bake into a revision, some of these ideas. So.
And I agree with you, but that to me is definitely comes, if you don't get that done, but you manage the school through this crisis and got your team rebuilt, that to me is the majority. If we takes us till next year to get communications, even though I want to get it done as soon as possible, then it takes us till next year. So that's what I don't want to lose sight of.
Okay, good enough. We'll set up a time for some further conversation.
And Dave, when you work with Jonathan, would you not let him use fancy terms like KPIs and things that he probably learned at Harvard Business School or something that we did not learn in medical school or anywhere else? Just keep those fancy terms out, please.
Speak for yourself, Susie.
Susie, I'll see what I can do to put it into everyday speak. Okay. All right. Well, we have a plan to move forward with the goals.
Yep.
So we're in good shape. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the
Sure,
feedback.
thank you. And
Thank you, Dave.
we'll plan for an executive session to just check in on them, January or February.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. We are on GP8E. Do we have anything to approve or not on that, Eliza?
We don't. I did include the annual agenda planning exhibit. Susan,
Okay.
you and I did talk about, we want to try to start to follow this a little bit more moving forward. Again, we've kind of been sidetracked the last few months. So I think we're just going to try to look forward to planning the agendas a little bit more around what we need to talk about annually and biannually or quarterly.
Yep. And I think that's just a good guideline. I mean, sometimes it doesn't make sense, but we should just consider those as we're setting up the agendas and then see if that is going to make sense for this particular month or meeting.
Correct.
Thanks. That's great. Okay. 7.2, we have a district calendar action item. The recommended action is to move to approve changes to the calendar to include the following days for the elementary school: January 15th, May 7th, June 7th, and June 8th. Do you want to walk us through that, Dave or Theron?
Sure. Theron?
Yeah, sure. We had a conversation with AEA and reviewed those dates with them on Wednesday. And this is where we landed. Just to let you know, when we were looking at incorporating some of the days that we would have to pay for, some of those, adding some calendar days, we took a little bit of a fire for that. People saying that it could pay for whole positions for people to do the makeup work. So they were just to let you know that was one of the side discussions that occurred when we had that conversation. But these are the 4 days that we can put in, and it really doesn't cost anything. They're already assessment days. So it's just a matter of turning them into academic days for the elementary school, which is where we're having the issue with days and length of year. So this will do it.
Okay. Any questions or?
Yeah, there's no additional instructional days for middle school or high school then with this?
No. Correct.
And so what happened to the April 2nd spring break that's still there? Is that's what you were referring to?
That's what I was referring to, yes.
Katie, each of those days has a cost of about $72,000 without para. And so, in our actually very informative conversations, when we've had a number of them with AEA as well as other teachers independently, and the discussion was around, you could hire some interventionists, you could run a heck of a good summer camp. And so we'd like to really kind of not spend, $150,000 for 2 days, and then really think about the possibility of like a really high quality, fun summer camp with the literacy and numeracy bend to it. So we'd like to go out with that in a more targeted way than actually, buying 2 more instructional days.
So if these assessment days are so easily bailed on,
well, now let me be clear about that.
I just want to make sure, because we have a lot of them in the calendar every year. And if, I just want to.
I want to be very clear, Katie, that this is not an easy bail. This is us saying, look, elementary school, you're going to have to find another way to do this assessment stuff. We need the instructional time for the overall school, and it is a pain point, and we are not earning the love and admiration of our elementary colleagues with this move. This move looks like it's an easy one. Oh, we'll just take these 4 days. But in conversations with Mr. Bastian, in conversations with numerous elementary educators, there is not happiness in the field about that, but there is a grudging recognition that it is important for the overall good of the school and the children in that school, all the children in that school. So I want to be very clear that it was not an easy take. And you will probably see those, maybe not quite as many in the years ahead, but there will probably still be some assessment days in calendars moving forward.
I just know in the past there's been some questions by parents about, the effectiveness of those, or the reach to kids of those,
Yeah.
So it just brought up the question. I didn't mean to be disrespectful about it, but
no, and I didn't mean that. I just wanted to be very clear that a lot of times when administration brings a recommendation, there's been a lot of horse trading. There's been a lot of research, and every time you make a change in a school district, there are repercussions, both negative and positive. So every time there's a change, regardless of what the change is, there are pain points and things like that. So I just wanted to be clear for the board that, we do recommend this. We do believe it's the right thing to do for the overall good of the elementary school, but it's not an easy fix. I mean, and Theron and I've been in, golly, I don't know how many conversations.
A bunch. And just in conversations with but this has been an agenda topic. I just looked back on the AEA minutes for us. That's been an agenda topic for 3 weeks. Chris Bastian came over and met with both Dave and I specifically about this particular item because of the teachers felt like having that assessment piece put back onto them was another just huge amount of burden to bear with the elementary school going back first and all those other things. They saw this as something that was just one more cross that they had to bear. And so it was a very tough sell to everybody there. And I think that they were concerned about having to extend in summer and those sorts of things. So those pressures relented to us being able to reassign the assessment days.
Any other questions, comments?
just before we approve this, then, is June 4th still the last day for 5 through 6? And then but the elementary school goes to June 8th, is that correct?
Darren, to my understanding, yes, because this is only going to be for the elementary school. Okay.
Right. The other two grades did attend virtual school during that time.
So to Katie's point, June 4th is listed as the last day of pre-K to 6, but what we're saying is that no, it's not. It would go through the 8th, right? We're extending the school year for the elementary to pick up 4 more educational days, right?
So we have 5th and 6th ending on June 4th and K through 4 ending on June 8th, and the high school at 7 through 11 ending on June 9th.
Yes.
No, everybody ends at the same time. You're talking about when the student's last day.
Yeah, that's what it says on the schedule from what I'm reading it. It just seems it's a little confusing, I think. I just want to make sure that we're clear on what we're agreeing to.
Well, it's only K through 4 that needs the extra days, so that's
That's
why they're
correct.
on June 8th. Otherwise, they'd be back on June 4th with the 5th and 6th grade.
And we'll need to revise the 2021 school district calendar to reflect these changes. Right now, we just need those days approved so that we can make those changes. Right. So literally grade 5 and 6 could end on June 4th for students.
Okay, any other comments or questions? I'll take a motion to approve the calendar as amended.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Okay. quick roll
Eliza?
call. Katie Frisch,
I'm going to vote nay on this one because I'm concerned about this 5-6 issue.
okay. Susan Merolt,
Aye.
Jonathan Nickel,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero,
Aye.
Susie Zimmett.
Aye.
Okay, so moved with a 4-1 vote. Thank you.
Okay, moving to the consent action items, I'll take a motion to approve those as presented.
So moved.
Second,
Aye.
All right, really quickly, Katie Frisch,
Aye.
Susan Merolt,
aye.
Jonathan Nickel,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero,
Aye.
and Susie Zimmett.
Aye.
So moved. Thank you.
Okay, and next is future meeting work session topics. Anything that we would not normally be putting on our agenda that we feel like we need to add here? Or that we need to put into the next meeting for sure? Hearing none.
No,
oh,
I
sorry.
just do, I want to keep changing the public comment policy. Susan, do I need to, or the procedure, is that something? Because what I want to do is make, when people fill out the form, like actually make them put their, put it in what they're saying in there so we can better capture it, and then put some, like other fields in there for like follow-up and, what the board's thing
Okay.
is, and then we
Yeah,
can
that's
just
a good
keep
idea.
that all in a big master file.
Why don't
'Cause
you
I
just,
think we lose a lot.
I agree. Why don't you do a little draft and then we can talk about it. It shouldn't take very long because I think it sounds like a good idea, and we can just talk about it and then put it in place.
And Jonathan,
Okay, so
we had talked about not having repeats, not having someone who's already done a public comment do another public comment.
We've done that
yeah, I
in
think
this within the same meeting.
Mhm.
We've not ever, said you can't say it again at a different meeting.
Well, I think it's like, and I'll just use Tamara as an example. I know she's spoken in every meeting and she said different things, and I'm not sure that I can really remember all the different things. So I know she's talked about the number of deaths every time, but she's also had other points. So I want to figure out some good way to capture that, and then to also, as somebody who has continued to come and speak, but we really don't, we can go back and watch all the videos, but there's no way to easily process it. So that's, I was thinking along those lines, and then to just get it documented into an ongoing document that, and then we can also use it to track action items that we've asked either Dave to look into according to those comments.
I agree. I think the action items particularly sound like a good idea. And so
okay.
And really,
So
I mean, if
what I'll
that's,
do is I'll make a proposal and I'll send it, and then we can just discuss it at the next meeting. Does that work?
yeah. And I mean, go ahead and just send it to me and Eliza and Dave and Susie maybe, and then, or maybe just me, I guess.
Okay.
Because it may not even need a discussion. I mean, if it's just adding, we're going to ask what they're talking about and then have a follow-up column. I think that seems easy.
Yeah,
to
because there's no real policy on this, right? So
No.
we basically, it's a procedure that we decide on. Okay. All right,
Yeah.
then I'll follow up with you on that.
Okay, thanks.
I have one thing, which is we have the bullet point, the work session with Gilbert regarding facilities, housing, master plans. I think we should take a step back from that at the next board meeting and just discuss the outcome of the election and how to go forward based on whatever outcome that is. And a sort of a mini planning session for how to go forward.
Yep. We will put that on the agenda.
I don't think we need external advisors.
No, I agree.
I don't.
Eventually you will. Eventually you damn sure will, but I don't disagree that the board owns the first opportunity to do a debrief post-election.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I agree. So
we will absolutely need somebody going forward if it's a positive outcome. But to plan that when we don't know what the outcome is a little bit of hubris. Plus, I think either way, we need a discussion about process going forward and how we're going to manage that as a district.
Yep. Agreed. So we will have that on our agenda for the next meeting. Anything else? All right, Susie, you are our debriefer.
So the audit was long but exhilarating to learn what we're doing, what we're missing. It was like the highlight of my 3 years on the board. And the rest was kind of necessary. But I really was very excited that we spent a lot of time on the audit, maybe too much time, but maybe we strayed a little bit with my questions here and there, but I thought it was very exciting to review an academic audit. And the rest of the board meeting was fine.
Great. I think that's it.
Motion to adjourn.
What?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
There you
Second.
go.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Have a
Have
good
a
evening.
nice evening.
You too.
Enjoy the full moonish.
Yeah.